Hello and welcome to the 2021 Clio Sports Awards Summit. We are happy to have you all with us today as we honor the best in sports advertising for 2021. And here to help us do so is the host of NFL Network's Good Morning Football, Kay Adams. Take it away, Kay.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the 2021 Clio Sports Awards Summit. My name is Kay Adams. I host NFL Network's Good Morning Football. So yes, normally I would be chatting to you about all things football, Bears, Packers, and so on, but not today. Today, I'm your personal cheerleader as we not only reveal, but also celebrate the best sports marketing of 2021, the year that sports came back. It's been a wild ride, to say the least, but I gotta say, safely returning to stadiums and arenas has been an absolute dream come true. What's better than the energy and excitement of live sports as you cheer for your team among thousands of other fans? Today, we're coming together in a virtual stadium of sorts to cheer on the sports marketing community that works so tirelessly to drive our industry forward. We'll hear from leaders in the community as they share insights on topics like the future of women in sports, and fan engagement. We're going to speak to industry legends and honor those who make a difference, not only in the world of sports, but also off the playing field and in their communities. Today, we'll highlight the 2021 Clio Sports Gold and Grand winners, and later in the show, reveal this year's MVPs, the of the year winners. After the show, we encourage you to check out all the 2021 Clio Sports winners at clios.com. The work is sure to leave you inspired. It wouldn't be a sporting event if we didn't give a tip of the hat and a nice applause in your homes, wherever you are, to our presenting sponsor. Big thanks to AT&T and First Horizon and official partners Aquimo and Dunn & Company. Thank you. For more Clio Sports Awards coverage, you can follow us at Clio Awards. And if you're posting on social, and you should be, please tag us. Don't forget #Clio Sports. Okay, our first pitch of the day is the Gold Clio. Let's take a look.
Hey, are you ready? Gonna take that prize. Got a feeling, and I won't keep quiet. Hey, I'm going, yeah, I feel alive. Get ready, tonight's the night. You know I break the rules, don't you? You know I'm ready to fight, alright. I'm just a rebel that's on the move. There ain't no stopping me, so don't try. Yeah, I'm unstoppable. Ain't nobody gonna break my stride. Yeah, I'm unstoppable. So I don't cry. You better watch out, I'm a roaring lion. I got a feeling that the time is mine. Yeah, the champion, I'm at my prime. All the danger, I always win the fight. You know I break the rules, don't you? You know I'm ready to fight, alright. I'm just a rebel that's on the move. There ain't no stopping me, so don't try. I'm unstoppable. Can't stop the feeling. I'm unstoppable. Can't stop the feeling. I'm unstoppable. Can't stop the feeling.
Amazing work. Wow. Congrats to all of the gold winners. There are so many athletes performing incredibly, both on and off the field, making a difference in local communities. Today, we're honored to present the 2021 Clio Sports Impact Award presented by AT&T, not to an individual, but rather an entire team. The WNBA's Atlanta Dream are working hard to transcend the game to show economic, social, and cultural impact that athletes and athletics have on people worldwide. The teams use their voice to take a stance on equality, diversity, and inclusion in the fight to drive social change and social justice reform. Their actions have empowered and encouraged others to follow in their steps, making them true leaders, which embodies so much of the Clio Sports mission. Here to accept the award on behalf of the entire team is the Atlanta Dream's Elizabeth Williams. Presenting the award today and also having a quick chat with Elizabeth is Sabina Ahmed, AVP of Sponsorships and Experiential Marketing at AT&T.
Hello, my name is Sabina Ahmed, and I'm the AVP of Sponsorships and Experiential Marketing at AT&T. We are so excited to partner once again with the Clio Sports Award this year and to be presenting the 2021 Clio Sports Impact Award. AT&T thrives on its purpose of creating connection with each other, with what people and businesses need to be productive every day, and with the stories and experiences that matter to all of us. We are committed to elevating women in sports, entertainment, business, and beyond, and work to create real, actionable change in the global landscape for gender equality as part of our overall key value of Stand for Equality. Now, today I have the pleasure of honoring a team who has transcended the game to show the social and cultural impact that athletes and athletics have on people around the world. During the summer of 2020, this team spoke truth to power and shine a light on racial justice.
Lean in. Let me tell you of women in the business of saving. Women who do the heavy lifting while the world watches from the sidelines. Women who, when given the broken, decided to be their own saviors. And we let you bask in the greatness. That is, should you be so lucky to be granted this magic, and you so vain you think we do this for you. As if we don't have our own dreams to ignite. As if the women of Atlanta and Wakanda have nothing better to do than to put a city on their backs. Lean in. We save ourselves first and you get saved in the process. And ain't that the way it always goes? We suit up and you are saved just by touching the hem of our garments. I say glory to the women who fight for something worth saving. Glory to the women who are actually in the paint. I say I see you. You be visible and you be worthy of all this praise. Do it for the dream.
We at AT&T, along with the Clio Sports Awards, are pleased to announce the 2021 Clio Sports Impact Award recipient, the Atlanta Dream. This award will be accepted by Elizabeth Williams. Congratulations to the Atlanta Dream, and thank you, Elizabeth, for being here.
Thank you so much, Sabina. On behalf of the entire Atlanta Dream organization, I'm humbled and honored to accept this Clio Sports Impact Award. All of the work that not only the Atlanta Dream has done, but the entire WNBA has done over the past few years in regards to social justice has been very tough, but rewarding. And so we're just humbled and honored to accept this award.
All right. Thank you, Elizabeth, for joining us. Now I'm going to start with the question and take you back to 2020. The WNBA bubble, or the wubble, as it was affectionately called, was so much more than a way to safely execute the 2020 season. It was successful in so many ways and other reasons beyond basketball. The unique setting allowed players and teams to mobilize together and put the WNBA at the center of driving change in the racial justice movement. So Elizabeth, tell us what led the Atlanta Dream to speak out and lead this charge?
Yeah, I think, well, 2020, not only for the Atlanta Dream, but for everyone was a unique year, obviously with the pandemic beginning. I think that allowed everyone to kind of reflect. And so even within that, we saw even more of the social unrest that was happening in the world. And people noticed like this is a reality and we're in a space where we felt like there could be something done about it. I think the pandemic put a lot of things into perspective. And so with the WNBA, once we realized that a bubble season was going to happen, we wanted to make sure that social justice and what else was happening in the world was not lost. We didn't want to feel like we were truly in a bubble away from that. And we used our platform and the fact that there weren't a lot of sports on TV to talk about issues that matter to us. And then specifically our team, we had, our situation with our team owner at that moment in, denouncing Black Lives Matter and the organization and everything that it stood for. And that was disappointing to us. And so we really wanted to double down on our efforts and to see how far our impact could really go.
It's amazing to see how your journey started. And thank you for sharing that, Elizabeth. And on that same sort of theme, how has this whole movement and you rallying behind with your team, how has this brought you closer together to your team, but also united the whole WNBA?
It's been really incredible to see. The one thing about being a relatively smaller league, like when you think in terms of professional sports, it's pretty easy for us to communicate with each other. We have our group chats. There's only 144 of us. And so between, different player representatives for each of the teams with 12 people, you can get the word out pretty quickly. And I think between that and just a general understanding of what was important to us and being a league of Black women and understanding how some of these issues hit a bit closer to home, I think that is what really allowed us to kind of mobilize and come together and see, the type of impact that we could have.
I can't even imagine. And I guess staying on that theme, isolating yourself away from friends and family for several months, it sounds incredibly difficult. Did you and the team learn anything about yourselves, both personally and professionally, during your time in the Wobble?
Yeah, I think, first of all, things get put into perspective, what's important to you. Being away from your family, it's not necessarily just being away from your family, but like kind of being forced to be away from your family. Like there's no way to kind of get in and out of the bubble. It forced you to self-reflect and to think about what's important to you and to reach out to people when you need to, having deeper conversations, talking about our emotions, our feelings. The league put together mental health check-ins. And so having those opportunities to talk about things that are pretty often stigmatized, it was great. And so obviously it's tough being in a bubble, being away from the people that you care about, but it helped having a common goal and knowing that there were things that we did want to focus on to keep our minds focused.
Absolutely. And it's incredibly great to see you have this platform like the WNBA behind you and support you. So on that note, what is the message you want to send to your fans or followers that may not have a platform like this, that still want to make an impact on issues that are important to them? How have you encouraged them, as well as the other players around you?
It really takes everyone. I think a lot of times, especially when you think about elections or like massive elections, you only really see the big names or the large themes, but in reality, like it's the volunteers, it's the poll workers, like nothing goes without them. And I think something that I picked up on and WNBA players picked up on was really the importance of organizing and how that really is a grassroots thing. So I think my message really is that anyone can make an impact, and you'll be surprised how important that really is once you start.
So last question for you, Elizabeth. What's next for the Atlanta Dream, both on and off court?
Well, actually, we've made some big changes. We just hired a new general manager. We just hired a new head coach. So, and we have a lot of free agents. So we're definitely going to see a lot of changes on the court just because the organization has been kind of going through this change, starting with ownership, just starting from the top. And that's really what we as players want to see as well. So we're really excited about, what the future holds on the court. And off the court, I think we just want to keep having a really big impact on the community. Atlanta is a massive market. It can be a huge sports market. And so we really want to grow that and build the relationships with our community and keep doing the work that we are.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for your time on behalf of AT&T and the Clio Awards, and congratulations again to you and the Atlanta Dream as the 2021 Clio Sports Impact Award recipients. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
There's no better way to follow up that chat than with our first panel, Investment in Women's Sports, presented by AT&T. Let's take a look.
At AT&T, we believe in the moments that connect us. And when those moments connect with an entire generation, progress happens. Seeing another woman be the first, but not the last. Hearing your champions chant your name. And as these connections grow, so do the voices of women everywhere.
Well, hello and welcome to our panel where we will discuss investment in women's sports today. My name is Thayer Lavielle and I run The Collective, which is a division of Wasserman that is solely focused on creating change for equity and fairness for women in sports and entertainment. We look at this in a 360-degree way, starting with she as a consumer, fan, wealth owner, casual athlete and artist, pro athlete, and artist, and within the industries we work. I really want to thank AT&T for their partnership with Clio Sports and specifically for the support of this panel. Okay, let's get to it. Today, I am joined by three leaders who are creating change for women and girls through their work in their industries. First up is Benita Fitzgerald Mosley, who serves as the head of community and impact and is the president of Fund Play for League Apps. In this role, Benita helps guide League Apps in its commitment to shape a youth sports industry centered by a core belief in the power of equitable sport. So important. Benita is a purpose-led champion in both sports and business, helping to create programs that support youth through sports in underserved communities. The former CEO of Lauria's Sport for Good Foundation and an Olympic gold medalist in the 1984 games in the 100-meter hurdles. She has received many, many accolades, awards, and served in key leadership positions within sports and the Olympic movement. Welcome, Benita.
Thank you. They're nice to be here.
Yeah. Kirta Carroll is currently the vice president at Foot Locker, North America general merchandising manager for their women's division and women's line, bringing over 15 years of experience to this position. She has also worked in fashion and retail, healthcare, and hospitality. Kirta was so instrumental in launching the original 602, which was Foot Locker's standalone women's brand for several years. Today, though, she takes the work to heart of serving women everywhere with better and cooler kicks in her new role, which focuses on product strategy, creation, and development across the North American organization. So, ladies out there watching, when you go into Foot Locker and love what you see, you have Kirta and team to thank. So welcome, Kirta.
Thanks for having me.
And lastly, please help me welcome Sabina Ahmed, who currently serves as AT&T's sponsorships and experiential group lead, which includes partnerships with the NBA, WNBA, US Soccer, and NCAA. They also present key events like the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, AT&T Byron Nelson, and the Tribeca Film Festival, as well as athlete partnerships like Sue Bird and Alex Morgan, among many others. A 20-year veteran in the media and marketing space, Sabina has always been a strong proponent and advocate for reaching and promoting underrepresented voices. Welcome, Sabina. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here too. This is such an important topic. So there's so much said about women, women today, and there's so much momentum around women and women in sports. But I wanted just to first start with a little table setting around women as consumers. Women are driving 85% of household spend, controlling 89% of all banking decisions in the US, and 2/3 of the wealth in this country will be owned by women in the next decade. Couple that with young women outpacing men on earning college degrees and even taking of jobs, not necessarily in pay yet, but hopefully we'll find some real equity there. Seems to be a wholesale shift of economic power that's made marketers, I think, and I'm curious to hear from you guys, stop and think about how they need to reframe themselves to a very powerful and, quite frankly, socially discerning consumer. Women also make up, on average, 48% of a sports fan base, with younger generations becoming more fluid in their approach to fandom. watching it on the go in snippets, loyal to athletes and maybe some teams, but could be athlete first. Big shifts are happening in the space. How do we make sense of it all? So I want to first dive in and obviously want this to be a conversation where, as I address one question, please jump in and participate if you have an opinion on it. But I wanted to start off, Kirta, with you. Foot Locker has long been actively invested in supporting women. Why and how do they do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think great question there. You set it up sort of directionally with just the power of the female purchaser, and I think certainly that's one part of it. But two, I think the overall just inclusion, right, and who is driving the consumer marketplace today. How do we make sure that she feels like she's part of sort of this bigger, massive industry that certainly I would say from a true sneaker culture perspective, and again, not to go too deep in history, right, has never really been about her, right? The creation for her, the storytelling for her. I think she's always been there. She's always wanted to be a part of it, but it hasn't necessarily been directed at her. And I think this is just the time where everyone has sort of been catching up, is focused on catching up and focusing on committing, someone that has always wanted to participate, and they're understanding the true value. So I think the why is that it should have been there all along, I guess, right? Because it's not like she hadn't wanted to purchase or had the income to purchase, but certainly just doing what we should from a sort of inclusive perspective. I think the how, it's in many ways following a formula that has existed in the industry, right? It's around ideas for her. Sometimes she requires a little bit of a different development of a shoe model, right? So called a last in the industry, right? But how do you make sure it fits her foot? Storytelling for her, so celebrating things that matter to her in a way that's relevant to the female consumer. Connecting and I think lifting up other females is very important to the female consumer. So bringing her into the industry in new ways, whether it's through athletes, it's through musicians, through culture, and I think really bringing it full circle. Again, I think the interesting thing, it's not that hard. It just maybe hasn't necessarily been a focus because the industry has been pretty big without her.
Well, now marketers have every reason, literally, to pay attention from a fiscal and economic perspective to start to pay attention more. Mm-hmm. Sabina, what, from AT&T has been pretty heavily invested in the gender equality space and has thrown a lot of weight and resources behind that. And from the top of the company to, in store. And so what is behind AT&T's decision to go all in on women, and particularly in sports as fans, players, leagues, and teams?
Yeah, absolutely, Thayer. And that's a great question. And, from a partnership perspective, investing in women in sports and women in sports sponsorships makes a lot of business sense. Traditionally, these types of opportunities and sponsorships are very accessible and come at in very easy and sort of turnkey way that many brands of different statures can work with them, right? And allows us to be nimble, to be creative, and do a lot of great groundbreaking things. This is really a sort of a no-brainer, like to Kirta's point, for us to be there. It's actually very easy to do. And partners like the WNBA, as an example, actually make it really a great opportunity for us to get creative, right? And really co-create these opportunities together. It's really very much in the AT&T ethos to support women across all endeavors. And the work we've done really and continue to do really challenges the conventional norms of sponsorships across, going from sort of more traditional media to doing things differently and reaching them in different ways and unique ways. So a great example of that is really our partnership with the WNBA. Across kind of, from a league perspective, as well as the work we're doing with the Changemakers organization. And obviously this kind of came at the heels of the partnership with the NBA overall, but we wanted to make sure that this wasn't just an add-on. This was truly a standalone marquee partnership for us. And as we built this partnership, we asked ourselves key questions of, can we work on innovative ideas together? Can we do things differently and creatively? Can we really create an environment for women and athletes to tell their stories in an authentic way. And the WNBA really kind of came through, and we're very excited about, since our partnership and our inception in 2019. And, just to hit upon a few key points, when we first started our partnership, we did a lot of key, I would say, firsts in the industry. We were the first non-apparel brand to be on all 12 team jerseys since the inception in 2019. In the pandemic year in 2020, when the WNBA draft had an opportunity for their broadcast to be covered on ESPN instead of ESPN2, we were actually a strong proponent of that, and we pushed for that to happen. We were there with support and put our money where our mouth was to make sure that we're actually investing from a media perspective and a marketing perspective to truly support, right, the WNBA draft. As a result, we saw some great numbers, right? The viewership went up 123% year over year, and it was the second most covered draft of all time from a WNBA perspective. We were also a strong proponent, right, and one of the inaugural partners of the WNBA Changemakers. When they approached us last year with this partnership, we saw it as a natural fit, and we joined in right away and wanted to make sure that we obviously take that kind of partnership to the next level. And as part of that, we bring in a lot of AT&T resources to the table, from the welcome video where we brought in other athletes as well as fans and our own leadership to kind of welcome them. We provided them with a special gift with a brand new 5G device, as well as a 1 year of AT&T wireless service, a year of AT&T HBO Max subscription. We continue that sort of partnership through this season as well. And then finally, we continue to make sure that we are, again, going beyond just sort of a business partnership to creating opportunities for women and athletes to give them access to our business services and create opportunities for them to connect with each other. So we've created a 5-part panel series, bringing other women leaders in other industries and connecting them with WNBA athletes. So bringing in, Charlotte Jones, bringing in, a Taylor Rooks, and making sure that they are strong women are connecting with other strong women to truly create a great environment and sort of help and support each other.
Well, congratulations on all that. I do think that you guys are leading the charge in many ways from a brand perspective in relation to pushing leagues and media companies to be more bold in their gender equality quest. So congratulations on that. Benita, I want to shift gears a little bit, because where you play is really in youth sports, which is so important because we can't grow fans of sport without the top of the funnel and having more girls play sports. What are you seeing from an engagement perspective? That, what are the challenges that we're facing as we're coming out of this pandemic? Particularly, I'm sure girls and their participation is taking a bit of a hit. And how do we support, the investment into that top of the funnel in terms of engagement from a sports perspective?
Yeah, with youth sports, I know, Kirta, you were saying that when you're trying to connect to the female consumer in particular, connecting to things that they really care about is really important. And so, as we face the challenges coming out of the pandemic, and certainly kids in underserved communities, girls and women, we've seen a definite shift, and and a decrease in their participation in sport throughout the pandemic. And there, in many cases, those organizations are the slowest to come back. And so at League Apps, we have been, since its inception, a sponsor of the Play Sports Coalition, which is a coalition of 4,000 youth sports organizations across the country. And we're going to reemerge soon with an amazing 18-person board, which includes Laura Dixon from the Pro Sports Assembly and others. And the mission of the organization is to really find a united, bring a united industry in support of the organizations who need it most, and ensuring that all kids have access to play. And so, the infrastructure for the Plays movement includes, wanting to increase that access, to provide participation metrics and show a correlation between that participation and the wonderful benefits that kids and youth participating enjoy, and making sure those benefits of youth sport that accrue to these kids, whether it's education or social emotional development, self-confidence and awareness, and goal setting. Some things are very tangible, some things are intangible, but all help these kids be successful both on and off the playing field. And so we want to use this coalition and these ideas to champion the successes that we really have seen thus far. We helped to get the New York mobile sports betting bill passed, and however you feel about mobile sports betting. And the good news was we got $5 million a year from the taxes from mobile sports betting designated to youth sports organizations, particularly those nonprofits serving kids in underserved communities. So, having the business community rally behind the Play Sports Coalition, whether it's either nationally or even locally and regionally, is going to really help to support and foster a really vibrant path forward for girls, but for youth as a whole.
Yeah, well, congrats on all that success. And that's, we'll take the investments however we can.
Yes.
So, good work there. I wanted to turn a little bit to just women's sports in general, because we've talked about the fan of sports who is a woman, and how we look at serving them overall. But women's sports, look, I feel like there's been great momentum around the conversation with women's sports, lots of great increases in viewership. I would say that at the beginning of the pandemic, everyone thought this is it. Women's sports are going to be dead on the vine. That's, there's no more investment. And lo and behold, women's sports were the ones to actually lead, because they've been leading through tough times, because they've always been in challenging times as a women's sport, to get everybody through. So they led with the first virtual draft with the WNBA. They led with the first bubble with the NWSL. They led with tons of social justice stuff with the WNBA in the Wubble. So I really feel like they have led, and they have seen huge momentum coming out of last year. Viewership gains, merchandise gains, sponsorship gains, more brand commitments, 100 million by Michelob Ultra. Budweiser coming in big and strong on stuff. Lots of great partners coming in. So Sabina, I wanted to talk a little bit with you about, you had mentioned earlier in your response around how you guys had helped to move a game from ESPN2 to ESPN, which I'm sure a lot of our WNBA partners would have liked to have seen the other week in the playoffs. How specifically are you pushing the envelope with your partners on demanding kind of better distribution, and like how do we encourage other brands to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's obviously not just one entity that can push for it, right? It's part of like a larger ecosystem. And I think, Benita, you touched upon this as well. Every major part of different organizations have to play a role in this, right? So it can't just be me as an advertiser and as a brand pushing for it. We have to have the broadcasters meet us in the middle, and the league partners as well. So all of us have to kind of work together to make sure that we're truly representing women the right way and putting support, right, and investment behind it. That means definitely calling on our media company partners, right, to give more airtime to the leagues and women and athletes. And the example of WNBA draft is a good one. There's a lot more we have to do because those inequities still exist today. So we are continuing to push the envelope, and we have to obviously put more support behind it as we do. But we want obviously other companies to come along with us, and having a partner like see her in sports as well as the collective, I think allows us to kind of pool all these resources together, work with other advertisers and brands, so we can all kind of push through and make sure that we make those things happen. And it won't come right away. The change, it'll take some time, right, to build that sort of momentum. And we've got great use cases like the WNBA draft as an example to kind of help push it. If you build it, people and the audiences will come. You just have to kind of start from somewhere. So we're kind of really excited about the opportunity, and kind of building on what Benita said, having kind of partnerships like Her Time to Play with the WNBA kind of allows us to start at a younger age, right? And making sure that we're creating the opportunities for young women and girls to engage with one another, so that they can start to see themselves in the future, put the money behind it, put the support behind it, and then also create the tools and avenues.
Hello.
The partnership with the NBA overall, but we wanted to make sure that this wasn't just an add-on. This was truly a standalone marquee partnership for us. And as we built this partnership, we asked ourselves key questions of, can we work on innovative ideas together? Can we do things differently and creatively? Can we really create an environment for women and athletes to tell their stories in an authentic way? And the WNBA really kind of came through, and we're very excited about, since our partnership and our inception in 2019. And, just to hit upon a few key points, when we first started our partnership, we did a lot of key, I would say, firsts in the industry. We were the first non-apparel brand to be on all 12 team jerseys since the inception in 2019. In the pandemic year in 2020, when the WNBA draft had an opportunity for their broadcast to be covered on ESPN instead of ESPN2, we were actually a strong proponent of that, and we pushed for that to happen. We were there with support and put our money where our mouth was to make sure that we're actually investing from a media perspective and a marketing perspective to truly support, right, the WNBA draft. as a result, we saw some great numbers, right? The viewership went up 123% year over year, and it was the second most covered draft of all time from a WNBA perspective. We were also a strong proponent, right, and one of the inaugural partners of the WNBA Changemakers. When they approached us last year with this partnership, we saw it as a natural fit, and we joined in right away and wanted to make sure that we obviously take that kind of partnership to the next level. And as part of that, we bring in a lot of AT&T resources to the table, from the welcome video where we brought in other athletes as well as fans and our own leadership to kind of welcome them. We provided them with a special gift with a brand new 5G device, as well as a 1 year of AT&T wireless service, a year of AT&T HBO Max subscription. We continue that sort of partnership through this season as well. And then finally, we continue to make sure that we are, again, going beyond just sort of a business partnership to creating opportunities for women and athletes to give them access to our business services and create opportunities for them to connect with each other. So we've created a 5-part panel series, bringing other women leaders in other industries and connecting them with WNBA athletes. So bringing in, Charlotte Jones, bringing in, a Taylor Rooks, and making sure that strong women are connecting with other strong women to truly create a great environment and sort of help and support each other.
Well, congratulations on all that. I do think that you guys are leading the charge in many ways from a brand perspective in relation to pushing leagues and media companies to be more bold in their gender equality quest. So congratulations on that. Benita, I want to shift gears a little bit, because where you play is really in youth sports, which is so important because we can't grow fans of sport without the top of the funnel and having more girls play sports. What are you seeing from an engagement perspective what are the challenges that we're facing as we're coming out of this pandemic, particularly? I'm sure girls and their participation is taking a bit of a hit. And how do we support, the investment into that top of the funnel in terms of engagement from a sports perspective?
Yeah, with youth sports, I know, Kirta, you were saying that when you're trying to connect to the female consumer in particular, connecting to things that they really care about is really important. And so, as we face the challenges coming out of the pandemic, and certainly kids in underserved communities, girls and women, we've seen a definite shift and a decrease in their participation in sport throughout the pandemic. And in many cases, those organizations are the slowest to come back. And so at League Apps, we have been, since its inception, a sponsor of the Play Sports Coalition, which is a coalition of 4,000 youth sports organizations across the country. And we're going to reemerge soon with an amazing 18-person board, which includes Laura Dixon from the Pro Sports Assembly and others. And the mission of the organization is to really find bring a united industry in support of the organizations who need it most, and ensuring that all kids have access to play. And so, the infrastructure for the Plays movement includes, wanting to increase that access, to provide participation metrics and show a correlation between that participation and the wonderful benefits that kids and youth participating enjoy, and making sure those benefits of youth sport that accrue to these kids, whether it's education or social emotional development, self-confidence and awareness and goal setting. Some things are very tangible, some things are intangible, but all help these kids be successful both on and off the playing field. And so we want to use this coalition and these ideas to champion the successes that we really have seen thus far. We helped to get the New York mobile sports betting bill passed. And however you feel about mobile sports betting, the good news was we got $5 million a year from the taxes from mobile sports betting designated to youth sports organizations, particularly those nonprofits serving kids in underserved communities. So, having the business community rally behind the Play Sports Coalition, whether it's either nationally or even locally and regionally, is going to really help to support and foster a really vibrant path forward for girls, but for youth as a whole.
Yeah, well, congrats on all that success. And that's, we'll take the investments however we can.
Yes.
So, good work there. I wanted to turn a little bit to just women's sports in general, because we've talked about the fan of sports who is a woman and how we look at serving them overall. But women's sports, look, I feel like there's been great momentum around the conversation with women's sports, lots of great increases in viewership. I would say that at the beginning of the pandemic, everyone thought this is it. Women's sports are going to be dead on the vine. That's, there's no more investment. And lo and behold, women's sports were the ones to actually lead, because they've been leading through tough times, because they've always been in challenging times as a women's sport, to get everybody through. So they led with the first virtual draft with the WNBA. They led with the first bubble with the NWSL. They led with tons of social justice stuff with the WNBA in the wobble. So I really feel like they have led, and they have seen huge momentum coming out of last year. Viewership gains, merchandise gains, sponsorship gains, more brand commitments, $100 million by Michelob Ultra, Budweiser coming in big and strong on stuff. Lots of great partners coming in. So Sabina, I wanted to talk a little bit with you about, you had mentioned earlier in your response around how you guys had helped to move a game from ESPN2 to ESPN, which I'm sure a lot of our WNBA partners would have liked to have seen the other week in the playoffs. How specifically are you pushing the envelope with your partners on demanding kind of better distribution, and how do we encourage other brands to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's obviously not just one entity that can push for it, right? It's part of a larger ecosystem. And I think, Benita, you touched upon this as well. Every major part of different organizations have to play a role in this, right? So it can't just be me as an advertiser and as a brand pushing for it. We have to have the broadcasters meet us in the middle, and the league partners as well. So all of us have to kind of work together to make sure that we're truly representing women the right way and putting support, right, and investment behind it. That means definitely calling on our media company partners, right, to give more airtime to the leagues and women and athletes. And the example of WNBA draft is a good one. There's a lot more we have to do, because those inequities still exist today. So we are continuing to push the envelope, and we have to obviously put more support behind it as we do. But we want obviously other companies to come along with us, and having a partner like See Her in Sports, as well as the collective, I think allows us to kind of pool all these resources together, work with other advertisers and brands, so we can all kind of push through and make sure that we make those things happen. And it won't come right away, the change. It'll take some time, right, to build that sort of momentum. And we've got great use cases like the WNBA draft as an example to kind of help push it. If you build it, people and the audiences will come. You just have to kind of start from somewhere. So we're kind of really excited about the opportunity, and kind of building on what Benita said. Having kind of partnerships like Her Time to Play with the WNBA kind of allows us to start at a younger age, right? And making sure that we're creating the opportunities for young women and girls to engage with one another, so that they can start to see themselves in the future, put the money behind it, put the support behind it, and then also create the tools and avenues for young women and girls to communicate with each other, to have the tools to see themselves in the future will really kind of go a long way. So it is actually, it seems very easy, but it requires a lot of momentum and a lot of different entities working together to make it happen.
Yeah, we like to say the flywheel is broken in many different spokes, right? So they all need help, and there's not one of us that's going to solve it alone. So absolutely. I think to that point, we all need to lean in. Benita, as a former Olympian and knowing the success of women athletes this Olympic Games in Tokyo, what would you advise companies, organizations to do to keep up the momentum and messaging around women's sports, because that really affects your key constituents, which are youth, and how they're looking up to their heroes, particularly with kind of the influx of the athlete as hero these days, correct?
Yes. I mean, if you can see it, you can be it. And so seeing the women in Tokyo on the world stage, competing at the highest levels and being successful. Those are the kinds of things that always inspire more girls. I was inspired myself to participate in athletics. It was first gymnastics. And if you could see me in real life, I'd be 5'10" and not necessarily the 4'10" that most of the gymnasts are. So, but I was inspired by Nadia Comaneci. I saw her in the Olympic Games. I thought she was cool. I went out for the gymnastics team in my middle school, and thankfully that gymnastics coach put me on the team, but she was also the track coach. And she just kind of redirected me just a little bit away from gymnastics and into track and field. And thank God she did that.
Apparently it paid off for you.
Yeah. So
I mean, strong redirection.
Right, exactly.
Yesterday was Carly Lloyd Day in New Jersey, and there were boys and girls of every age there. They're going to build a home field, soccer field in her honor. They're going to, that will allow her legacy to last, long past her playing days on the national team or in the in the women's soccer league. And so, these are the kinds of things that we need. We need to keep these women athletes' presence in the public eye, whether it's through marketing or social media or other means. But as an industry, we've got to keep the momentum going. We've got to continue to invest in women's sports, whether it's media rights, content partnerships, and new companies entering the mix. I was looking at Allison Felix's new company called Sage. They just unveiled their new headquarters in California. I'm so proud of her. She's an athlete I've known since she was in high school, the most decorated Olympian track and field athlete in history. And we're really proud of her, but she's doing something herself. I think athletes have some ownership in this to find ways to keep their momentum going and keep their names and businesses in the public eye. And at League Apps, we think it's important too. We have several female investors. I talked about Laura Dixon earlier, but Swin Cash and Julie Fowley are among our female investors. So athletes need to find other ways. If you want to influence business, the best way to do is get involved in it yourself as an investor, as an owner, as a supporter, endorser of the business. And so there are many ways, I think, that athletes can do it, but I think that a lot falls on corporations as well.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I also would look at how do we as corporations and those agencies that work with these corporations continue to push people to just be more intentional in their inclusivity and in their choices as to how they direct their business. And so it could be the smallest, most subtle things as to analyzing what your spend is, men's to women's, what your activation budget is, who you hire, not only within your own team, but within your influencer team or within your production staff.
The Olympic movement started doing that a few years ago. And not only what you see on the playing field, certainly bringing that parity as to the number of women's sports, women's events, all of that, and finding that parity. As soon as they started doing that, guess what? On the U.S. team in 2012 was the first year that more women than men were on the Olympic team. More women won medals than men. And so when you give us that opportunity, we're going to rise to the occasion.
That's right. That's amazing. Kirta, shifting gears really quickly, because this is a really important point, and I might put you on the spot just for a second. When you look at what's being sold in stores, not just Foot Locker, but just retailers in general, there's so many amazing options for exercise apparel, like, yoga pants or running shorts or whatever. There's tons and tons of great stuff out there as a woman fan of a men's sport. There's not so much on the women's fan of a women's sport, or just a fan of a women's sport, man or a woman. I'm hoping that we see that turn around someday soon. Do you anticipate that coming to be? Because I do feel like the villagers are getting restless on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it actually plugs in really nicely to the conversation, because it is sort of this evolution, right? And I think the responsibility of the culture and the consumer and the athlete and the brands to make sure we push that forward. And I would say traditionally it's not been there. I think the Stage example is a great one. I think obviously Allison's done an amazing job bringing that to life. And I think even what I love about what she's doing too is it's become this bigger platform to celebrate athletes, celebrate the female. I think what she did from being a mother too, and sort of opening up some of the things she personally was dealing with through her journey, and making sure she could do what she wanted from an athletic perspective, but also be a mom, be present, and then support the next generation. I think gave it this much bigger platform that I think athletes needed to reach from a female perspective, and would say that's part of it. Is that from a traditional perspective, I think the male athlete has been dimensionalized outside of sport, right? They are style icons. They are speaking out around political and cultural opportunities. And obviously the female is there, but I don't know that we've been able to give her that sort of platform to celebrate her and say, look at, she's an important figure for us and an important figure to celebrate. And also, I want to be like her, right? And not just on the court. Like, I don't want to just like play a sport like her, but I want to be Allison Felix because she is an amazing mom and doing amazing things for the community. And I think that all is sort of part of the conversation we need to keep having in order to move it forward, even from a commercial side, which is funny to connect the dots, but it ultimately is celebrating these female athletes outside of their court or their sport or their very specific moment. And I think we're getting there. And obviously there's been tremendous conversation around the Olympics and many other sports in the last, I would say, many years, but it's still something we all need to work on and be comfortable doing that.
Yeah, thanks. I could not agree more with you on that. I also think from an athlete perspective, we've seen a lot of, at Wasserman and the Collective, a lot of athletes obviously coming into their own with their own voice, and social media has given them the platform to be able to do this in a whole new way. And some of that might be great for some athletes. Others might not really want or feel as comfortable in that, which I can fully appreciate as someone who probably falls into the latter side of that, just as a regular old human. But how do we, Benita, I guess I'll start with you. How do you look at the dimensionality of women and the complexity? Allison's a great example of this. We can look at Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka, with so many stories that are just human of late coming to the forefront around mental health, around women's health, around their safety with all this NWSL, issues going on. How does Fund Play support young women and girls to create a safer environment? And how do we as an industry go in and help continue this conversation, quite frankly, unabashedly?
Women are multidimensional humans, and most of us are playing a variety of roles in our lives in a very high level. I think I called it all my life. I'm a mom. I'm a wife of 25 years. My oldest is 22. My daughter's 17. I have two seniors, one in high school, one in college. And so I've been a mom and a CEO and a board member and an athlete and a wife, obviously, and a sister and a daughter. And so bringing all of those personas, I think, as Kirta was saying, to the forefront in advertising, in storytelling, I think is the thing that we want those women to see themselves reflected back through these athletes and these icons. And part of that is this idea around mental health, and that goes to obviously the physical, emotional abuse that some of these athletes have unfortunately had to endure. And I know this is true in the corporate setting. It's true in Hollywood in some cases, in music business. Many industries have fought this themselves. The Me Too movement is certainly reflective of that. At League Apps, we have partners that we call it League Apps Connect, but they're integration partners, and they're able to provide the kinds of background checks and training and education and technology that people need in order to fuel and make these environments more safe. That's important in 2021, 2022, that you can weave technology into helping this. People have better access to this training. They have better access to the tools that they need to track individuals that may have had a challenge in the past, and so to make sure they don't get back into the coaching ranks or around those young people. And so Players Health is one of our integration partners, and they've consistently shown us and their customers how to accomplish this holistically, like I said, through education and training and technology, the background checks. It's so important. It's more than just checking a box. You've got to make sure that you're creating the safe environment, that you're maintaining the safe environment, and that parents like myself can entrust the organization with your athlete and with their children.
Yeah, and in many ways, it's providing the youth sports sector the tools to be able to account for and hold other people accountable to,
Absolutely.
to their behavior, and also make sure that just fundamentally the kids are having fun doing what they're doing, right?
That's first and foremost.
Should be first and foremost, exactly. Sabina, tell me a little bit about tell us all a little bit about She's Connected and what AT&T is doing there, because it's a really quite a powerful campaign that you guys have created, and particularly for the players that are involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this really builds nicely off of what both Benita and Kirta mentioned earlier is, the multidimensional nature of women and women athletes is that it's not about just talking about what they're doing in the sport that they're engaging in. They have so many different lives outside of that. So it's important to make sure that we shed light on that. So as we developed the AT&T She's Connected program, it was important for us to sort of flip the model on its head and not just look at sort of a logo placement or a brought to you by AT&T, but truly create an environment where we allow these female athletes to tell their stories, which may or may not go beyond the sport that they're engaging in. So working with Chine Ogwumike, Alex Morgan, Maria Fassi, Sue Bird, we gave them the microphone, right, and allowed them to tell their stories, which really ranged from, their life in the sport that they're engaging in, as well as, their lives outside, the causes that they promote, how their second jobs, their careers outside of the sports, as well as, the foundation that they're creating for future generations, which is very important to each and every one of them. So beyond sort of obviously creating the awareness and behind these amazing and captivating videos, we actually offered each of these athletes AT&T Business Services and made sure we gave them opportunity for mentorship and how to create and kind of grow their sort of social following and their social programs. Stay tuned for more. We're actually very, very excited about the next phase of what we're doing around She's Connected and moving beyond even kind of sports as well. So really excited about the next generation of what AT&T She's Connected will bring to the table, and we'll share more as that program evolves.
Well, very exciting. We'll be on pins and needles waiting for that. Kirta, I wanted to see in our last remaining minutes here what your thoughts are just around, as someone that's really worked across the sector, particularly in retail, but in the sports world, I would say, for many years. What is your parting advice for brands and agencies listening in? And really, how can we all just be better stewards of gender equity?
I mean, I think the really nice alignment from this conversation today is that it's responsibility of many, and I think it's responsibility of the brands, of the athlete, and I would also say it's responsibility of the consumer to say, I'm going to invest in these things, and because it's important to the future, and certainly taking that on as I look forward. But I think sometimes we're going to have to think ahead of the curve, right? And maybe the commercial opportunity isn't necessarily there always today from a female athlete perspective or a sport perspective, because again, I think it's a shift in culture. And I have to tell a story I'm not proud of, but it's true, is that I have a 7-year-old son, and 3 years ago we were watching the women's we were at a restaurant in the NCAA basketball tournament. Women were playing basketball, and my son goes, "Wait, women can play basketball?" He was 4 at the time, right? And I was caught off guard, and I felt terrible about it. But then I thought to myself, it's not me, right? Like, I'm not telling him that doesn't happen. We live in New York City, right? He sees people everywhere playing basketball, but the culture of basketball wasn't necessarily forefront from a women's perspective, right? And I think that's where we all have to elevate it. We have to give her maybe more share of voice than we have been, give her a platform, understand, the dimension of the human and the female, and lift her up in different ways. And I think just maybe think a little bit differently. So it's a little bit about charting our new ways, but also be all in on it together, right? And be committed to it, because even more important than that, the sort of long-term nature of the athlete, I think it is about the younger generation and just how important sport is, Benita, to the sort of development of being a leader in the future. So Not a lot of advice, but I think we just all got to be in it together.
I love that. I love that concept. And I love that, what I see is that the younger generations also, and it makes me sound very old when I say that, I don't mean it that way, but like they're going to ask for what they want anyway. So we saw it last NCAA women's tournament. They demanded equality, which is pretty unbelievable. And we're supported in that pretty loudly. So there was a bit of a revolution happening there. Benita, same question goes to you. If parting advice, I mean, you're really, again, kind of sitting at this space where, kids are coming in and feeling excited about sports. How do you keep them in there? How do you make sure that they stay, that women or I should say girls stay in to keep going?
Gosh, I see myself, my daughter's in the college application mode, and she wrote this wonderful essay. She was assigned to write one from her English teacher, but it was to prepare them to use it in the Common App or for whatever. And she decided to kind of hold myself and my mom up as role models, and how she wants to follow in our footsteps as a strong wife and mother and leader in the medical field. Charting her own path, because neither one of us are in the medical field, but inspired by us to do and emulate what we've done. And so I'll go back to the phrase I said before: if I can see it, I can be it. And she said, "Mommy, read this and edit it for me," or something like that. Well, gosh, of course, I was in complete, it was just verklempt, I guess.
Right.
No better word than that. Just tears when she said, "I didn't want to make you cry." I was like, "Yeah, but you did."
Yeah.
And so,
in a good way.
Yeah. And it really is so important if they can see these female athletes, these icons, if they're front and center, if we're sharing these stories. That's the important thing. If we have the products and things that Foot Locker is putting out, those are the things that are really important, because as these girls come up and as they're playing, if they see these role models and they know they have lives and they're leaders off the court as well, it's that leadership that leaves a legacy that's going to inspire the next generation.
That's beautiful. And I think we'd all be curious to read that wonderful essay that your daughter read. So you should publish it afterwards. Yeah, you should, because I think we all need inspiration. And I would also argue that it's not just athletes that have that role. It's also all of us in these seats in business that have the role to really lean down and mentor and sponsor women who are coming up through the ranks to make sure that they're getting all the room to fly that they can. Sabina, I'm going to close it out with you. Give us some wisdom. Throw it down for us.
Absolutely. And, just building off of what both Benita and Kirta shared, it really is, everyone has a role to play. So I can control what I can, right? So as a brand and an advertiser, I want to make sure we push ourselves and our partners to continue to support and invest in women in sports. That's basically table stakes for us. It's kind of the theme of this day, is making sure everyone has a part to play, organizations and athletes likewise. And really, at the core of it is we have to all embrace diversity from within. We've got to become a company that represents the society and the culture, and the sponsorships, right? And the opportunities will follow. If we can sort of mirror what the world looks like today as organizations, then the opportunities for women will easily unlock. It really is very simple. So let's kind of be the organizations that we're trying to sort of like reach out for. And then finally, I think we shouldn't be shying away from the opportunity to tell these sort of different types of unique stories. The multidimensional nature of women, women of color in the LGBTQ community, women that are athletes and moms. We can't, shy away from allowing them to tell those different stories and life outside of the sports that they live in. It's important, and if we do shy away, we'll leave the opportunity on the table for the future of young girls, right, to see themselves as in sort of like the future careers that they're choosing. So it's important for us to make sure that we embrace any and all aspects of the multidimensional nature of women and athletes and the lives they live outside of the sports they engage in.
Indeed. And I think that will take continued effort on all of our parts and then some. So ladies, it has been such a pleasure speaking with you guys today. I feel like we could go on for a 3-day summit here, but there's just so much to dive into. But I really appreciate the time and the wisdom. And thank you again to Clio Sports for having us here today, and to AT&T for being such a great partner to Clio Sports in this. Thank you so much, ladies.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
With sports back, not only were we able to fill the stands and buy the merchandise, but the lucky sports fans in Tampa Bay were treated to some unforgettable wins. Tampa Bay, the home to two incredible teams, the Lightning and Buccaneers, who have collectively won 3 sports championships in 11 months, and gave me lots to talk about Tom Brady stumbling off a $2 million yacht, I might add. Tim Nudd, editor-in-chief of Muse by Clio, had the chance to chat with the incredible marketing execs from both teams to discuss championing creativity during the days of empty stadiums and how they approached the fan experience after what felt like a millennium. Sponsored by the talented agency behind the Lightning, Dunn & Company, here's our next panel, Tampa Pro Teams Champion Creativity.
Hi, everybody. Tim Nudd here with Muse by Clio, and thanks for joining me for our Tampa Bay panel today. This will be cool. Tampa Pro Teams Champion Creativity, sponsored by Dunn & Company. So it's a pretty good time to be a sports marketer in Tampa these days, with the Buccaneers being the reigning Super Bowl champions and the Lightning being the defending Stanley Cup winners. So excited to explore the creative marketing being done by these two great teams today. With my panelists, Brittany Austin, Senior Director of Brand and Content Marketing at the Lightning, and Nikki D'Onofrio, VP of Marketing, Events, and Entertainment for the Buccaneers. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Hi, Tim. Glad to be here.
Good to be with you guys. So I have an opening question for both of you, which is, before we look at the work that you've been doing, I'd love to hear what it's like working for a championship franchise. Must be a great feeling to walk in every day and be part of such a winning program. Brittany, what's that experience been like for you?
It's been very rewarding. I've actually worked for the Lightning. This is my 13th season. So 11 of those first 12 years did not include winning Stanley Cup. So to win 2 in the last 10 months has been pretty wild. And so there's been a full brand transformation that this team has really been through. And it's very rewarding to be able to celebrate with so many people who've been a part of building this brand in the community and celebrate it with fans. And so, plus we get to have a lot of fun. Nikki and I laughed about the last conversation we were having together was about taking trophies around town. And when you get to do that, we like to say that the beers are colder and the hot dogs are warmer when you're winning. And so certainly a really fun time to be a part of Tampa Bay.
Yeah, Nikki, it must be great time for the Bucs too.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, it's an unbelievable feeling. I mean, winning is always fun, right? But the emotions are running high, and the stress is a little high too as you're going through when we went through the playoffs and then we win the NFC championship and then onto the Super Bowl. There's just this surreal feeling of, oh my gosh, we made it, and I can't believe we're here, and we're happy to be here, but we want to win. So, then when we won. Just that camaraderie with each other on the team, the unity with Tampa Bay, all of that is just, it's constant. It's just a different level of excitement. It's a different level throughout the community. I mean, everybody is a fan of the Lightning or the Bucs, and it goes on and on for months. So it's that excitement is just stays with you, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to win, like I said.
No. Keeping fans engaged during COVID, obviously, had been a huge challenge across all of sports. Brittany, tell us about the Be the Distant Thunder campaign that you guys did. I know you did some really cool things to keep fans engaged.
We did. We had a lot of fun with this one. This is actually an evolution of our Be the Thunder tagline, which we've had for many years. So this is a statement that we have and a challenge we've issued to our fans for the last several years, and that has meant the concept of actually making noise and being literally in the stands, being that kind of offset to the Lightning, but has also been a challenge to be more than just that. And so as we went into a pause, didn't have any idea what live sports were going to look like, and then began to think about the reality of competing in an NHL bubble. So not only in COVID where you couldn't be together, but the team was over 1,000 miles away in Toronto. We said, how does this evolve, and how do we talk to our fans to keep them engaged? And Dunn & Co is our creative agency, and started to talk to them about strategy and looking at how were consumers in COVID reacting to this pandemic. And honestly, people really got creative, right? I mean, all of a sudden they were doing happy hours on Zooms, which I think we all got pretty fatigued with after the onset. But we're doing things like drive-through birthday parades. So we really kind of saw, hey, this idea of social distancing doesn't necessarily mean social isolation. People were finding ways to connect and create community in non-traditional ways. And so as we started to drill down, we kind of got to this idea of we want to talk to our fans about being a part but not absent. And that then evolved our creative line from Be the Thunder to Be the Distant Thunder, which we all kind of laughed. We're like, is this too obvious? Like, is this too obvious? Is this too easy? But made a lot of sense and then evolved into this creative idea, which admittedly we caught lightning in a bottle, pun intended, in the sense that with COVID, all of these plexiglass barriers started popping up, right, in stores and separation. And our sport of hockey had glass already a part of our kind of world. And so we started to talk about this idea of these things that were in our system already that separated us. How could we flip it on its head and make this something that comes together? So we worked on an activation actually that evolved into a creative campaign where we invited our fans to come down to the arena and sign a piece of glass that was from our rink, writing messages of good luck and wishes to the team, then took that piece of glass, wrapped it up very carefully. I had nightmares about this thing breaking in the process. And it traveled with the team to the NHL bubble where it was installed for the game. We obviously captured it, captured our players skating by and reading these messages. And it was really impactful because it was this physical kind of representation of the Thunder 1,000 miles in Toronto. And then we were able to build out a creative campaign around it that included digital, social, TV creative and market. And then some extensions out even into, we pulled some of the fan signatures and ran digital billboards in Toronto with some of the fan messages on the route from the players' hotel to the arena, and then shared those on social where those fans are like, oh my gosh, like here's my message in Toronto to those fans, and really had a lot of success. And then on the flip side of it, was able to have players sign pieces of glass that then went into community places in Tampa Bay. We installed an Advent Health. So just this kind of synergy between this plexiglass barrier and kind of this idea that sometimes the things that separate us can bring us closer. So saw a lot of success with that. Was really a fun one. Took a lot of people to pull off one of those big ideas that you're not sure you can do, and it worked and was a great win for our community.
Yeah, really like that creative work. Such a cool concept, and you guys executed it wonderfully. Nikki, would love to chat with you a little bit about obviously the arrival of Tom Brady was such a boost for the Bucks. Tell us a little bit about that from a marketing perspective, and then also a little bit about the Raise the Flags campaign that you guys did for the playoffs.
Sure. Yeah. When Tom Brady joined the team, I mean, we saw an immediate impact, with increased interest, national media, fans calling and, increasing our followers, increasing our social engagement. I mean, across all channels, there was a big spotlight on us. And, it was also a crazy time because he came late March, early April, and that's when COVID was really hitting. So, at the same time, we were launching new uniforms, which we thought was going to be the most exciting thing we were doing all year, which is launching new uniforms from a marketing perspective. And then, of course, Tom came, and then COVID hit. So we were planning last year at the time when Tom Brady joined that, we were planning for a full sellout and season and hoping that everything would, clear up within a few months and we would be able to have a normal fall. Of course, that didn't happen. But what we did see was that immediate impact. And then from a content perspective, we were able to engage with the fans in the off season or during the season as much as we could. And, have Tom Brady and the rest of the team create content, and that we could use that. We had some specific events that were just for season pass members that were virtual and that we used Zooms, and we had the players on those Zooms so that the fans could connect with the players. But we saw a huge impact, and I think it just lit a fire among everybody who they're fans of the Bucks, but people went out and got the jersey, and and bought more gear, and it just, it really excited the whole fan base. Raise the Flags, our campaign really helped unite the fans as well. So last year was our second year of our campaign, and it had been really well seeded, I think, the year before. So we were perfectly positioned when Tom joined the team to, use that as a way for us, our fans, to engage and unite behind Raise the Flags. When we weren't able to, we knew we weren't going to be able to have all the fans in the stands. We mailed every season ticket holder, every season ticket member a flag early in the season. We gave away flags through drive-through events. We put flag car magnets on cars, these drive-through events. And we had, a distant way of engaging with fans where they could drive through. We'd have cheerleaders and Captain Fear and our Pirates waving and music playing, and kind of a party in the parking lot that didn't endanger anybody, and nobody got out of their cars. And they were able to engage with our staff and engage with the Bucks in a different way. So when we clinched the playoffs, on social, then we asked everyone to raise the flags and show us how they raise the flags. So it was literally, you had people who had flags and literally raised them. They put them outside of their homes, outside of their schools, firehouses, on the side of buildings throughout Tampa. And then we had people who were able to just show us how they raise the flags through social by just wearing Bucks gear and standing out front of their house with their family and waving and taking pictures and things like that. So, the campaign we were able to have, a response that on a social level, and then also, out in the community, the response was just phenomenal from fans. Tons of celebrities, influencers, everybody kind of got behind the campaign. And like I said, I think because we had already seeded it a year, by the time we hit the playoffs, we were perfectly positioned for it to just blow up as a huge success.
Out of home and social, I'd love to hear a little bit about how important that is. I guess, first of all, out of home and activations, how important is it for a sports franchise to kind of be on the ground with its fans out in the community? Brittany?
I think it's critical. I think for us, it is the best way to meet and interact with new and different audiences. For us, and Nikki mentioned the sellouts too. It's like when you have limited access even to games at this point. I mean, we've had 200 plus straight sellouts. It's an opportunity for us to get our brand in front of people that maybe aren't at games all the time. That's true for social as well. But activations, both of us, I think, did the drive-through. We got creative during the pandemic, and what does it look like to get things physically in people's hand and interact with them. In the first playoff run, we did socially distanced watch parties where it was like pods. It was like we were trying to do anything that we could to get creative to gather people. But for us, it's important brand extension because there's only so many people that you can fit in this building, right? We've even expanded into trying different types of events like Bolt's Brew Fest we introduced a few years ago because it allows us to get in front of new audiences, expose them to the Lightning brand with the intention that they can then buy a single game ticket, but maybe aren't here all the time. And then obviously just the grassroots perspective of getting the city engaged. Like you mentioned, the car flags and stuff. You can't drive around town right now without seeing people displaying their Tampa fandom. So for us, I think it's a pivotal part of what we do and an important part of our marketing mix.
Yeah. Okay. Is it the same for you, Nikki?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's paramount for us. Being active and present in the community is everything. We have street teams that go to festivals, events, parades, schools. We have Pirates that go out into the community, cheerleaders, mascots. Obviously, a lot of that was a challenge during the past 18 months, but now we are getting back out there, especially at some of these larger events and as high school football games and things like that have started to come back. Last season, we launched home gating, where we would set up a tailgate outside of fans' homes and provide them everything they would need to a tailgate because they couldn't come see us live because of COVID. So we would show up at their house on the day before the game. We would set them up with everything they needed from trays of food to snacks to beer to, with some of our partners like Budweiser and Coke. And we provided a tailgate in their cornhole games, just a lot of fun photos and things like that. And that's something that was so popular with our fans that we brought it back for this season, and we're doing it for our away games this year. Okay. So that's something from COVID that actually, stuck, but that is a way for us to get out into the community and engage. And we were able to see lots and lots of season pass families and be safe and distant from them, but still, provide a really fun experience. After we won the Super Bowl, we took the Vince Lombardi Trophy on tour. We visited, hundreds of community partners. We reached out to thousands of people. We took photos, thousands of photos. And we really try to get out there as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, that's a nice asset to have for sure. Social media, I'd love to hear your strategies there, because to me, social is interesting because it's often used in a very transactional and sort of informational way, but it's also quite emotional too. So how do you balance that and like develop a voice in social that's engaging and fun, but also informative? Brittany, how do you guys handle that over at the Lightning?
Great question. I think our social strategy has evolved a lot in the last several years. I guess that's really the name of the game in social, is that it's ever changing. I think it used to be way more transactional and informational, and certain channels lend that way more now. But I think more than ever, especially as audiences get younger, they are looking for something different from teams. The younger audiences we're seeing oftentimes don't even have a team affinity. They're interested in athletes, right? So they might have not have a favorite team, but have favorite athletes that fall. And so for one of the things that we've kind of shifted and realized is we're no longer producing content on social for diehard fans only. It is a major shift into casual and non-fans. And so for us, how are we creating content that is allowing them to see more access, more personality behind our players? Hockey, interestingly enough, is a little bit more traditional, a little bit more team first. As the athletes are getting younger, they have grown up in social, so they're using it more, which is helping us, and we're having to ask less than we used to. But you can already see the generational change in some of our older players that do it less to the guys that are comfortable in it now. And so I think a big thing for us is how are we creating content on different platforms that speaks to the younger audiences? TikTok, Snapchat is very different than the Facebook and the Twitter. We still have to talk and produce content for Facebook and the avids that are there. But for us, it's been a lot about how do we differentiate by channel and content, and how are we giving access and personality to the things that you're saying. We had a lot of fun during the playoffs with Alex Killorn, created a show called Doc Talk, where and this is another great thing for Tampa Bay, where he literally got on his jet ski and zipped around to his fellow teammates' house on Davis Island. It was around the same time that Tom Brady had come into town, so there was a lot of jokes about, can we zip up to Tom's house and interview him, which I don't think ever happened, but it's probably is very top on Killer's list. But it was a great opportunity. It was on Instagram Live. It showed player personalities. It showed because Killorn was kind of the interviewer, he had a great relationship naturally with his teammates. And so they were more engaged, and it was a huge hit. He sold a lot of t-shirts. We raised a lot of money from that. And so had a lot of good, but I think that's a big thing for us is how are we producing content that showcases player personality and not just this transactional informative way. And the Bucks have some great Tom Brady and Gronk content on that side that's come out too. So the athletes even are doing that together as well.
Yeah. Nikki, tell us about that.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. I mean, broadly, our approach is to entertain our fans, bring them closer to the team, and then, through access, information, and, getting them the information and helping them to engage on a platform specific way. So Tommy and Gronky is a show we launched last year. Year 2 this year, we've only released 1 episode so far, but it blew up. I mean, especially this year, because you get to see the players, out of the helmet, out of the pads and the uniforms, just sitting there having a chat like friends. Clearly you got to see this if you saw this last one, Tom and Gronk were wearing these awesome sunglasses, and just had a fun discussion. And it's just great. It's great content. It allows our fans to engage with our players, see a different side of their personality. And this last episode blew up. I mean, it was on Good Morning America, it was on the Today Show, and it's gotten millions and millions of views. So clearly fans are craving that. And I think the general public in general, as Brittany was saying, not just fans of the team, but people just want fun content. And so we saw, our increases in our followers just based on that episode alone. Yeah. On top of the content, then everything needs to be appropriate from an audience and function perspective. So, each platform, we try to design fun content, and, we use the different tools that each platform has to be able to optimize engagement and also eventually revenue on those platforms. So as they change, as Brittany said, our strategy needs to change and evolve with it. I mean, TikTok wasn't even here 2 years ago. So, for us, it's just about prioritizing those areas of focus and tactics on each platform, and then have a really good content plan that brings fans closer to the team.
Okay. I want to touch briefly on design as well. Design is, Nikki, you mentioned team uniforms. That's obviously a great design project. There's many areas in which design touches sports marketing. How important is design to both of your organizations, Brittany?
I think it's kind of the framework for everything that we do. There's a filter, kind of standards that we go through. For us, we're big fans of less is more, simple is complex, and how are we consistently and cleanly presenting our brand across all of our channels. For us, it's also been a unique way to subtly have nods back to the championship. For us, last season, we had typography that was woven into our campaign that was reflective of engraving that you see on the Stanley Cup. So while we turned the page for a new season, we had nods back to the win. This year, uniquely starting as back-to-back champions, but also really, again, turning the page. We've got some banners that are woven into this season's campaign. So it also gives us a little bit of creativity and not having to overtly talk about some of the wins, but having some subtle ways to talk about it. But I think the biggest thing that's changed recently is the social space of having design look and feel that can have room for creativity and flexibility on all of these different channels that didn't used to exist. Gone are the days that you're just designing for print or just designing for out of home. Right. It's got to work across so many channels. And so how do we have a creative kit that can be flexible, but when you see it, it's Tampa Bay Lightning.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys have a holistic approach like that?
Yeah, I mean, everything we do, we try to embody, sort of the spirit of Tampa Bay and have our brand personality come through in all of our creative. Our visual and design, it's really, beyond all else, it's really just bold. There's strength in the typography, richness of the color palette, highly defined photography where you can, see the sweat in the players' faces, in the studio and when they're on the field. You can see those beads of sweat, those types of intensity and boldness we try to have come through. We do for our photography, we do, tight crops of players in action, that raw energy. So whether it's copy or it's text or if it's photography, we want that raw energy to come through, whether it's on the screen or whether it's in print on a page, or whether it's the side of the side of our stadium on one of our tower walls. We try to have a look that tells the story of passion and intensity, and that's really where we focus with all of our campaigns and just the brand in general.
Okay, I'm also curious about franchises in the city, sort of how they feel about each other. Do you feel like you're competing for fan time and attention, or do you feel like it's just each team's success sort of helps the other team? What's your thinking on that?
I think I was actually just looking at this recently. We have a lot of crossover. When you look at the numbers of teams that are, I think it's well over 50% when you look at, Bucs fans that are Lightning fans or Lightning fans that are Bucs fans. So to some degree, Tampa is a small market. It's not New York where there's, massive amounts, but I think that we've seen a lot of success. And what are the chances that we win in the middle of a pandemic? Back to back, and I think it's been really positive because the way my perspective is, it has put us in conversations that we wouldn't have been in if we hadn't have won. So, for instance, we won the Stanley Cup in the middle of the pandemic. Then Tom Brady is here and it's like, hey, our guys were at the Bucs game with the Stanley Cup. And it was like, no pressure here, right? Of it's your turn and vice versa, right? And so when the Bucs won the Super Bowl, we as an NHL team probably wouldn't have been in the conversation. However, because we had won, they win a Super Bowl, and then we're in the conversation around Tampa Bay because the Lightning just won, and so for us, it's been vice versa, and then we won again. So now teams again, no pressure. It's the expectations in the market are okay, Rays, you're up, Bucs, you're up, and so the sentiment has been really positive, and so I think there's a phrase about rising tides raise all ships, and I think that the affinity for and pride of the city has been a really positive thing for both of our groups.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just being at the stadium, you know, having our players there and our players at the arena and your players at the stadium, and bringing the Stanley Cup. I mean, when we showcased that last year with the Stanley Cup, the crowd just, you know, the limited crowd that we had there, but they loved it. I mean, they just went crazy. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, and you know, it allows us to do some things kind of collaboratively too. We talked about it earlier. We collaborate on a trophy day where the Stanley Cup and the Vince Lombardi Trophy had a little bit of a, you know, half day out in Tampa with photo opportunities. Tampa Mayor Jane Castor was involved, and team executives from both teams were there. And we just had, you know, we were able to really have fun with it and celebrate together as Team Tampa Bay.
Nice.
Yeah. I think the connection too amongst our athletes has been really fun. And as we talk about digital and social, that's been huge for both of our teams in terms of them interacting with each other. And so, you know, if it's our athletes that are then interacting with something on their channels, maybe it's football fans that haven't been exposed to NHL or vice versa. I think that Nikita Kucherov and Andrei Vasilevsky were in Russia with the cup recently, and they recreated the TikTok that Bronk and Grady did when they first got here. And so there's been some really fun things that have just like made Tampa Bay fans just go crazy. So it's been really fun to watch that too.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my last question is really just about, you know, going to market right now as defending champions. In the Lightning's case, back to back, how does that affect how you're going to market? You know, how much do you look back and how much do you look forward, Brittany?
Great question. For us, also, our hockey ops is very adamant that it is a new year and it is a new team and it is a new mission. And so we support that message, but we're kicking off our season this year with a seeding campaign called Back to Back Together Again. A little bit of a play and a nod on back-to-back championships, but celebrating what hopefully is looking like a normal year finally. And so for us, kind of kicking off the season with an acknowledgement to the win, but also turning the page. For us, it's about how do we leverage back-to-back championships to gain new followers? Because our opinion is if not now, then when? If you are not a Lightning fan already, then when will you be? And so how do we find ways to leverage that going into a new season and kind of thinking through that messaging across all of our platforms to kind of leverage the success?
Okay. Nikki, challenges and opportunities of being champions?
Yeah, so I mean, we had obviously, we after 50 years were the first team to win or to play in their home stadium and to win in their home stadium, which was, again, during COVID, just the whole thing is just crazy. It's amazing. But fans weren't able to really celebrate with us at that game. They were able to celebrate the boat parade for sure. They did a lot of celebrating there, but they weren't able to celebrate with us at the game. So we celebrated our win in the off season. We had the boat parade, and then all throughout our marketing in the off season with renewals and, focusing on this year, we really spent February through August marketing and patting our chests about winning the Super Bowl and putting banners and signs and content all related to that. Then as the regular season started to approach, our approach turned to, just like Brittany said, the same thing, the Lightning, where we're just focusing on the new season, because this team, once kickoff happens this year, this team hasn't won the Super Bowl. It's a brand new team with some of the same players, but it's a different year. Mm-hmm. So at the regular season kickoff game in September, since we weren't able to celebrate with fans in the stadium last February when we won, we had a big kickoff event prior to the game where we celebrated the Super Bowl win. We had giant Lombardi trophies on the field. We had, lots of pyro, great videos. We unveiled the permanent signs in the stadium that, celebrated our win. And then kickoff happened, and then it changed. So we flipped our messaging. We're focused on the new season. We're not looking back on the championship. We're celebrating it from a perspective of we're still excited that we won, but from a marketing perspective, we're not out there saying any longer that, Super Bowl champions is not a focus. So now it's just, hopefully we can get to the playoffs and get to the Super Bowl again this year, and we'll be able to stay back to back as well.
Exactly. Well, thank you guys, both of you, for chatting. This has been really insightful and cool, and good luck the rest of the way this season.
Thank you
much.
And thank you all for watching. I'm Tim Nudd, and coming up next, we have a deeper dive into Dunn & Company's work for the Tampa Bay Lightning.
When I think back at working with the Lightning at the very beginning, they were an organization in transition because Mr. Jeff Vinik had just moved down from Boston. He just bought the team, and he began to put a lot of money. He was investing in not only the team, but the entire environment in which like fans would go and have that experience.
We were all incredibly nervous because we wanted that business so bad. And it's crazy to think about how far we've come since that day. The market has completely transformed. The fans have completely transformed. And I would say, you know, our agency has a bit as well.
And myself and everybody in Tampa Bay included was recognizing, okay, this guy means business. And very soon the team started to get quite a bit better.
We wanted it so bad because we knew how special it could be and how much potential there was to make amazing work.
It was great that we were hired about 10 years ago, right when Mr. Vinik bought the team, so that we could kind of in lockstep with him transform the team. He transformed what was happening on the ice and the experience for the fans, and we transformed the messaging that Tampa Bay as a community began to see in and around the town. In 2011, when we first started working with the Lightning, we just jumped in with a campaign called Be the Thunder. And it was an amazing idea because it was a rallying cry. Be the Thunder. We're the Lightning team, but the Thunder is what follows the Lightning.
What does it mean for someone to wear an athlete's jersey? Is it supposed to be some kind of good luck charm? A way to be transported to the ice? Or feel like you've shown up in uniform? Maybe it's just a simple way for somebody to say, we're in this together.
The effort was more to acknowledge that we wanted people to be fans by being loud and being demonstrative, clapping, and when you're at a game, really give it your all. And it was during those years that we really wanted to make creative that was more traditional, but that was relevant to the community. And we tried to come up with really, really inventive things that hadn't been done. And the first thing that we ever did, kind of in that genre, was the slap shot billboard. On one side of the highway was a hockey player who was taking a slap shot, and the puck was going over I-275, the interstate, and it destroyed an outdoor board on the other side. And we got a lot of play off of that, and it won us our first Clio Award, which we're super proud of.
The fans believed that when we asked them to be the Thunder, that they were supposed to cheer, which is in fact what we wanted them to do. But we realized that we needed them to do so much more if we were going to build a true community in this market.
We did this amazing exercise that resulted in a strategic framework that we call the Fandom Ladder.
And so we began to design work that could talk to fans at all of these different phases of the ladder, and we were setting out to simply get them to climb up one rung. Wherever they sat, increase your fandom by one level.
We needed these fans to wear lightning blue, to live the brand. Well, why weren't they?
We had to make Be the Thunder mean more than just cheering. It needed to be about how you spend your time.
So what were some of the challenges in doing that? Well, one of the challenges was large market fans, hockey fans, would wear their market's jerseys to the Lightning game.
I always felt that the Distant Thunder campaign was about fans outside of our borders, but it did the most for the fans within this community.
If we don't think that we're worthy of letting a fan outside of our market wear a jersey, we're never gonna really bleed blue for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So we came up with a great idea, and it was called Distant Thunder.
Niekedy potrebujeme na život novú perspektívu. Spoznať nových ľudí a vidieť nové miesta. A toto je dôvod, prečo som prišla sem. Keď som sem prišla, nemala som so sebou veľa vecí. Iba jeden malý kufor a tento model robí Tampa Bay Lightning. My name is Evi Chervenkova, and I'm a Lightning fan who lives in Bali.
Distant Thunder was a campaign totally built around the idea that other people outside of this market, even outside of this country, were Tampa Bay Lightning fans. And they showed their fandom and they waved it high and they wore their jersey in public. And when we could document that story and bring it back and show Tampa fans that out-of-market fans felt this way about the team?
Because it bolstered their sense of pride and their sense of place and made them feel proud to be part of this community that stretched so far outside of Tampa Bay.
Mi chiamo Fabio Sorini, sono un giornalista sportivo e sono un tifoso dei Lightning che vive a Torino, in Italia.
Meu nome é Rafael Amarante. Eu tenho 27 anos. Eu sou professor no Rio Grande do Sul, Brasil.
My name is Callum Brown. I'm a logistics specialist in the Royal New Zealand Air Force, and I'm a Lightning fan who lives in Auckland, New Zealand. We are the global Lightning fans, the Distant Thunder. My name is Callum Brown from New Zealand, and I'm proud to be the Thunder.
It was amazing. We were building all of this momentum. My goodness, the wind was at our back, and we get to this point where we are the best team in hockey. On paper, we are the best team in hockey. We have the best records, we have the best team, we're winning the most MVP awards, all of our players are winning individual awards, and the pandemic starts.
I remember the day in March that I turned on the news and they said the NBA has canceled all their games. And I thought, crap, I know exactly what is coming next and we have a big problem on our hands.
Prepare to play games without fans.
Without fans? What's it going to be like without fans?
I think it sucks. Am I allowed to say that?
I remember getting the call that hockey was coming back. And it was time for us to tackle this very difficult challenge of figuring out how to make our fans feel connected to a team that would be on the other side of our continent.
And that began a renaissance in Dunn & Company's creative thinking and bringing platforms to the Lightning.
The strategy line for the All On Board campaign was apart but never absent.
They allowed fans, the Lightning did, to come down at the end of July and sign the glass.
400 fans. They signed this 8-foot-tall glass panel from the hockey rink, and it is now installed in Toronto.
All their fans signed the glass. They brought it here.
If you signed that, you were at that game today.
I feel like I'm going with them.
Never seen this done in sports before.
Just awesome to have that support, and the fans took the time to go out and sign that, so that's pretty special.
The pandemic remained. The next idea we had was something called Tweet Tape. And Tweet Tape was just born out of a continued notion of how can we connect fans with the players in the organization when they can't be there in person.
It was taking fan comments, transporting them to where the players are, and using them to unite emotionally the spirits of our fans and the spirits of our players.
Twitter account asked followers to tweet their words of encouragement to the players using the hashtag #TweetTape. Some of the tweets have been printed into the tape used for sticks and pucks. The Bolts shared new pics today of the team seeing some of those messages.
Their players have always been accessible to fans. They interact well with the community. The Lightning have gone above and beyond to make sure that connection still exists.
It's been really difficult not going to games and being there in the stands.
I just thought it was a really cool gesture by the team to acknowledge all the fans being the Distant Thunder this year.
The Lightning win the Stanley Cup! They have reached the top of the mountain! They are the Stanley Cup champs!
Knowing that we had won the Stanley Cup and we had access to the Stanley Cup, we created an initiative where you could spend the night with the cup.
If you think about it, Airbnb Bolts was really only for one family who could experience it, but the ripple effect that we got from the buzz that was created in the community, the people who were talking in bars about, did you hear, you could stay the night with the Stanley Cup in this little thing they're calling Airbnb Bolts, that's what we really needed. We needed the community talking postseason about that win. Because the win is a moment in time, and we needed to keep feeling that energy after the season ended.
You can snuggle up next to Lord Stanley with a sweet setup.
The Bolts have transformed one of the luxury lofts at Amalie Arena into an Airbnb, but only for one night.
The ultimate hockey sleepover will include a 5-course meal, a champagne happy hour, a chance to skate on the ice, and they can even ride the Zamboni and set off the famed Tesla coils. The night will end with a movie on Lightning Vision. And did we get to mention they get to do all of this with the Stanley Cup right by their side as they sleep?
So now we have 2 cups. What do you do with 2 cups? If 1 cup gives you the right to talk with more confidence, what do you do with 2 cups?
In all these years working with the Lightning, they are the most humble organization. They never really want to tout themselves. But when you win a back-to-back Stanley Cup, you have to acknowledge you have something special right now. And so it was time to bring a little swagger to the forefront in our messaging and our advertising. And the way we did that was we had a campaign called Lightning, Thunder, Rain.
We wanted to find a unique way to drive this point home. So we partnered with Seattle-based company Rainworks to create an outdoor billboard using special hydrochromic ink that reveals a hidden message which would only appear on rainy days. That message, here comes the rain. The key is the ink's ability to become translucent when wet, revealing whatever artwork has been printed on the vinyl underneath. We used it to cover the headline and posted the board during Tampa Bay's rainy season. Luckily, the out-of-home gods were smiling down on us. It rained the day the billboard was installed, bringing the Lightning's reign as Stanley Cup champs to life like never before. According to Outfront, the outdoor company, this is the first time in North America that a billboard has used hydrochromic ink. It took a lot of effort to pull it off, but an unprecedented championship deserves a first-of-its-kind celebration.
Lightning, Thunder, Rain allows our community to own the Lightning status, not only locally, but to stake our claim in the ground nationally. We've made it. We officially have arrived.
To make work that moves people is the reason that this agency exists. It's why I opened the place. And the Lightning opportunity gives all of us the chance to do exactly that day in and day out. To make people feel something, to make people believe in something so much that they're going to give their everything to it. And this agency does that for the Lightning, just like the Lightning does it for the fans.
They're not just our clients, they're our friends, they're part of our life, and they're our teammates in this journey to make amazing work that people talk about and remember.
It was just a matter of weeks into lockdown when sports-deprived fans were begging ESPN to move up the release of The Last Dance documentary. Who wouldn't want to binge some of the most incredible moments of Michael Jordan's career? I'm from Chicago. Hello. What you also may have noticed when watching was the man behind Michael's success, one of the most acclaimed sports agents that ever was, elevating athletes to superstardom. Today, Clio Sports recognizes the legendary David Falk as the 2021 Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Presenting this prestigious award, client, NBA Hall of Famer, and dear friend, Patrick Ewing.
Hello, my name is Patrick Ewing, and I'm the head basketball coach at Georgetown University. Thank you, Clio Sports, for the opportunity to present the Clio Sports Lifetime Achievement Award to a true legend and a great friend. I've known David for over 30 years, and he has done an outstanding job for both me and numerous other clients, both on and off the court. David's tenacity, work ethic, and vision is why he is the best at what he does. On behalf of Clio Sports Award and all its fans worldwide, I want to present the 2021 Lifetime Achievement Award to you, David, and congratulations.
David Falk taught me the evolution of business, how to utilize my likeness, my personality, my basketball talent channel that into the business aspect of Michael Jordan as a person.
Everyone who's been represented by David turns out winning. He really takes good care of his people, and we've become great friends. And you know, my life has gotten a lot better as a result of my association with David.
I think the only person I've ever met who's more competitive than David Falk is Michael Jordan. I think what's made him successful is his tenacity. You know, he never stops.
The more I was around him, even though I couldn't get in a word because he talked so damn much, I knew that I liked this guy. You know, I really liked him, and I thought he really worked hard at what he did, and that was very important to me.
If David Falk had been my agent, I'd probably be the happiest man in the world today, because he knew how to strike a deal with other owners.
David Falk's reputation, I think his reputation towards the players, from the players was great. The management side, they thought it was cutthroat. You know, he's hard-nosed, you know, hard negotiator. So he was always in the corner for the players.
The business relationship that would come to define David Falk began in 1984, when he became Michael Jordan's agent.
He saw something that no one's ever been able to do, and he basically, with a blank sheet of paper, created his own, his own perception of what he felt like he can, develop in terms of an athlete who had great personality, who come from a great family background, who had great potential from a basketball sense, and a bunch of companies looking for that type of marriage. And he carved out that, that whole persona, that whole Michael Jordan perception with corporations that everybody to this day has been trying to emulate.
I told the companies, sort of like the famous John Kennedy line, ask not what America could do for you, but what you could do for America. I said, I know what Michael could do for your company. I want to know what you prepared to do if we sign with you for Michael.
There is a category as people who get inducted as contributors, people who have contributed to the NBA, and even though David, probably in the minds of a lot of the people who are on the committees who vote for it, will be looked at as an adversary because of his nature of being an agent and representing players, and also fighting the collective bargaining agreement and trying to make it, a lot better for the players than it is for the owners. But the fact that he has spent 35 years as an agent in the NBA and has dealt with every single team and has dealt with the front office and the league office on a regular basis, his contributions probably somewhere can be or should be recognized as a major contributor. And I could see that as a possibility down the road.
Growing up in a very modest background, I pinch myself from time to time how blessed I've been, to do what I love to do. I'm one of the few people that I know that got a chance right after law school to walk right into the job that was my dream job and to work for the best and the brightest for 40 years. I'm grateful to the players that made me who I am, stuck by me. I'm grateful to people like John Thompson, for being a special friend and a mentor. I'm grateful for the, people I work with that make it fun to come into work every day. I'm incredibly grateful.
Hello, I'm David Falk, and I'm truly honored to receive the Clio Lifetime Sports Achievement Award. I literally have spent my entire professional career managing the careers of hundreds of professional athletes. It never occurred to me when I was in law school back in the 70s that I'd be doing advertising at all. And the fact that I'm being recognized today is truly humbling. I've had the opportunity to work with some of the greatest athletes in the history of sports, people like Michael Jordan, Patrick Ewing, John Thompson, Mike Krzyzewski, Dominique Wilkins, John Stockton, James Lofton, Wilbur Sison, and many, many others. And one of the most fun aspects of my career has been off the court and off the field, working with some of the most significant American consumer products companies, ranging from Nike, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Morgan Stanley, many, many others, to create some of the most fun and long-term commercials that have become part of our sports culture, part of our general culture, really. When you think of commercials like Nothing But Net, I Want to Be Like Mike, Must Be the Shoes. These have become part of our daily lifestyle in sports. And so to receive this award is a tremendous honor for me. I'm very grateful to the people at the Clio Foundation for giving me this award, and I promise you it will have a very prominent place in my trophy case.
Hi everyone, Tim Nudd here, Editor-in-Chief of the Clio Awards. And today I have the great pleasure of talking with one of the premier behind-the-scenes playmakers in all of sports over the past half century. David Falk, pioneering sports agent, most notably to Michael Jordan through much of his career, but also to hundreds of others. A gifted and innovative contract negotiator, and also, of course, a brilliant creative marketer who changed the endorsement and the product marketing game in sports in a fundamental way, greatly benefiting his clients and also in the process, changing pop culture forever. All of which we'll talk about today. So David, thank you for being here and congratulations on the 2021 Clio Sports Lifetime Achievement Award.
Delighted to be with you, and I'm truly honored to receive the award.
So David, one of your great innovations early on was to give athletes in team sports the same branding opportunities that athletes in solo sports like tennis enjoyed. So this approach, essentially predicted the future, where today players in many ways transcend the teams they play for. Why do you think you were so far ahead of the curve on that?
Well, when I started working in this business, I was still in law school in 1974. And the law firm that I worked for grew into the second largest sports agency in the world, called ProServe. And they represented people like Arthur Ashe, Stan Smith, Jimmy Connors, Lendl. And so while my first love was always basketball and football, I had to learn the tennis business. And I was the junior agent for both Arthur Ashe and Stan Smith. I didn't negotiate their deals. I monitored their royalty payments. I managed their schedules. And so as my career evolved, and I started working with some great basketball players. We had Marcus Johnson from UCLA, was the National Player of the Year in 1977. Phil Ford from North Carolina was the National Player of the Year in 1978. And James Worthy was the #1 pick of the draft in 1982. My understanding of the business evolved, and around me, the shoe business really started to grow. I mean, if I take you back to 1976, we represented 3 of the first 5 picks in the draft: John Lucas, Wally Walker, and Adrian Dantley. Their shoe deals were about $2,000 a year, and a few pairs of free shoes. By the time James Worthy came around in 1982, I made James the highest paid endorser in all the NBA before he ever played a game, on the same team with Magic Johnson and Kareem. So it was a natural evolution to me. And then when Michael came along, the really major variable for him was the Olympics. He started the Olympics in LA in 1984, in front of a worldwide stage, maybe as many as 1 billion viewers. And for the first time in his career, he really showcased the kinds of skills that he would showcase in the NBA that were sort of kept under wraps in the very tight team concept that Coach Smith had at Carolina. And so I felt he went to a poor team, hadn't won a lot of games, had been down for a number of years in Chicago. I really felt he did transcend the team before he even was on the team. And so to me, it felt like a natural evolution in the growth of my own career, to demand that he be treated just like a tennis player or a golfer. And the irony was that most of the major shoe companies in America thought that was heresy, that the prevailing wisdom at the time was you have to come into the league, establish yourself for 4 or 5 years before you can try to enjoy any types of off-the-court activities. And so none of the superstars at Michael's era, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Kareem, none of them had their own shoes. Whereas in tennis, you get a very young player coming to the league, coming into professional tennis, and right away, people give them a shoe, they give them a lot of clothes, their own rackets. That's the way it is in the NBA today. If you think how ironic it is that at Brand Jordan, Michael's own company, he has people like Zion Williamson coming out of Duke a couple of years ago, giving him his own shoe. He has Chris Paul with his own shoe, Carmelo with his own shoe. That was unheard of in 1984. And so for me, being a little bit of a contrarian, I guess, the more people told me that wouldn't work, the more convinced I was that we had to do it. And the rest is history.
Indeed, yeah. Take us back to 1984 when you became Michael's agent. Did you know from the very beginning how special he would be as an endorser, as a businessman, and of course, eventually as a global brand himself?
No, I think anyone that would say today, I don't think Michael would say, I don't think his parents, James and Dolores, would say, I don't think even Coach Smith, who's not with us anymore, would say. Everyone thought he would be exciting, and they thought it'd be good, but no one had a clue to how transcendent he would be. And I think that's a tribute to his intelligence, his drive, and the background he had both in his family and at North Carolina. I've said many times in interviews that if you could reverse engineer all the qualities that made Michael special, it would never work unless you had a lightning bolt ignite the mixture. And I think his family was special. They pushed him to always improve himself. No matter what he achieved, they always thought he could do better. And at Carolina, while he was a tremendous, competitor, he played with James Worthy, who was the #1 pick. He played with Brad Daugherty, who was the #1 pick. And Coach Smith forced him to not rely on his physical skills, to rely on his mind, become a great player that he became. So he had everything in the world a lot properly aligned. The stars truly aligned in his career.
David, you're famous as a brilliant negotiator, obviously the Worthy, James Worthy, and many, many others later. You're also a powerhouse creative marketer. I know you came up with the name Air Jordan. You had the idea for Space Jam. Do you think of yourself as a creative person first, a businessman first, or is it sort of all one and the same to you?
It's interesting because I'm a lawyer by training. Never took a course of marketing in my life. And I have a program at George Washington Law School called the Falk Academy of Management and Entrepreneurship. And together with my partner, Danielle Cantor, we teach a weekly course in negotiations. And the thing I stress the most in teaching the course is creativity. And I do consider myself a creative person. Some people might consider me a little bit of a cornball. Michael likes to tease me that Air Jordan was my first great idea and my last great idea. I think he says that to try to motivate me, but I think creativity is what it requires for a lawyer who is a great trial lawyer, making a pitch to the jury, to connect to the jury and to try to find a way to persuade them that his case is the right case. I think in marketing, when you're marketing athletes, I think your job is to be an entrepreneur and to think, like, where's the world going 5 years from now? Not where was it 10 years ago, because then you're just replicating the past. And to me, that's boring. So I do consider myself creative, and it's a great challenge to me. I've been extremely privileged to represent what David Halberstam would call the best and the brightest. I've had 55 players in the NBA alone drafted in the top 10 picks, 8 players drafted #1. I've had countless players and coaches in the Hall of Fame that have trusted their careers with me. And that creates a tremendous responsibility to try to perform at a level commensurate with the level of the players that you're representing, who are absolutely the best in the world. And so you constantly have to try to improve and get better at what you do, or you're not going to be able to, continue in a relationship of trust and confidence that these individuals are placing in you.
Yeah, this may be a case of choosing between your children, but do you have a favorite ad campaign that Michael did?
Yeah, it's funny. I think there's so many great ones. There really are. I mean, Be Like Mike is one of my particular favorites because Gatorade came to us and asked if we could approach the Disney Corporation and get the rights to a song from Jungle Book called Be Like Him. And ironically, right around the same time, Disney had called me cold to try to get Michael to create a child's educational product that was sort of like a picture book and a soundtrack accompanying it to help kids learn how to read. and we were miles and miles apart on the price. They thought they could get it for a small amount. And so when Gatorade called, then we went back to Disney. I think they asked us for $500,000 for the rights to the song "Be Like Him" from the Jungle Book. And Gatorade was incensed, and they hired a local group in Chicago, like a street group. And for $10,000, they created "Be Like Mike," which was probably way better for the commercial than "Be Like Him." And you know, and I have a lot of friends named Mike. I have clients named Mike, like Mike Bibby. And I always tease him and say, "Come on, I want you to be like Mike." That's not how he would do it. So that's one of my particular favorites. Like when we first started at Nike, I mean, with Jordan, I had a very close friend who ran all the marketing. We were both the same. We were both lawyers who would never take the cost of marketing, but we were pretty creative guys. So we make the deal. And the NBA, they come out with the first shoe, the ugly black and red one, and the NBA banned the shoe. So he calls me in a freaking panic and he says, "God, we're fucked." He goes, "NBA banned the shoe." I said, "God, that's the best thing I've ever heard." He goes, "Why?" So we're going to do a Banned in Boston commercial. Like, this is going to blow up the shoe. And we did it. The very first commercial, you know, it's like they pan Michael head to toe. It goes like, you know, on October 15th, Nike introduced a revolutionary basketball shoe. And on October 22nd, the NBA banned it. Then they had like the dragnet thing with the chisel into the stone. Said, "Fortunately, the NBA can't stop you from wearing the shoe." We would sit in Portland over sushi and beer, and we did all the commercials ourselves, like cornball stuff, like Flight 23 clear for takeoff. He's on the basketball court. There's smoke coming out of it. It was really corny, long before White and Kennedy came along or Chiat Day, and it was fun. It really was fun. I mean, those people are great at what they do, but it's really fun. It's really fun to be able to create your own stuff.
It's a great story. Wanted to ask you about the Last Dance documentary. Obviously, it was such a cultural moment at the beginning of the pandemic. Everybody was watching it. Must have been remarkable for you seeing Michael's story and your own story captured so fully and so reverently like that.
Yeah, you know, we started the project literally 30 years ago. It was David Stern's brainchild.
Mm-hmm.
And for many years, Michael resisted the idea of producing it. He's actually a very humble person. Not humble on the court, but off the court, he's a very humble, sort of laid back kind of a guy. And I think he just wanted to tell the story in his own voice, in his own words. You know, he's now 58 years old. And what I think it did for the public is it showed why Michael was the greatest player ever. It wasn't simply that he was the best jumper or the best jump shooter or the best dunker. It's because he had the ability to raise his game to the ultimate level when he needed it the most. I mean, his ability to drive himself and to drive others around him. And what I found interesting is that when Michael revealed himself in that way, he did the same thing in his Hall of Fame acceptance speech. And people were resentful about it. And they didn't understand that when he came back to basketball, he was almost 30 years old. He'd been away from the game for 2 years. He changed his body to play Major League Baseball. And he knew the clock was ticking. He only had so many years left to win. And that drove him to be as strong on himself as he was of the players around him. But very few of the players had the toughness to live under that kind of an environment. Some of them resented it, but at the end of the day, you know, they won 2 3-peats. So I guess his methods work.
For sure. There are so many off-the-court opportunities for athletes nowadays: corporate marketing, venture capital, digital opportunities. How do you see the role of the modern sports agent today in helping athletes navigate all that stuff?
You know, that's a great question because, you know, my partner and I talk about this all the time over the last 5 years. In the major team sports, certainly football and basketball, the rules in collective bargaining have dramatically limited the role of an agent. If you think about this, in 1985 and in 1990, I negotiated the highest contract in the history of the NBA for Patrick Ewing and Danny Ferry, who had never played a game. Patrick's contract was 55% higher than Kareem's, the highest contract ever. Today, when you have a Zion Williamson or a great player going #1, you know, my daughter would get the same contract that I would get. There's a wage scale. if you're a great player like LeBron or Kobe or Kevin Durant or Giannis, there's a max. You can only get, and if it takes you more than 1 minute, if you're LeBron's agent, to go in and say, okay, I want the max for 1 year, I want the max for 2 years, or the same thing for anyone, for Giannis or, you know, Kawhi Leonard. And so 70% of all the contracts aren't negotiated anymore. They're just standard deals. And I think it's dramatically reduced the role of an agent. I think that players who are forward-looking in the NBA are going to not hire agents over the next 4 or 5 years. They're going to hire business managers because their place in the draft is pretty mechanical. But what they really need is someone who can combine a lot of the elements you just talked about: digital marketing, you know, venture capital, movies, social media. And I think you can have smaller agents. I think the role of these big agencies is going to wane. They don't have enough time to spend with individual clients. And I think people are going to do sort of what Rich Kleiman is doing with Kevin Durant, like be like a one-person shop. That's where I think the business is going to go. That's where I think it needs to go.
Interesting. Okay. I'm curious to also get your take on NCAA athletes, you know, finally being able to make endorsement money. Do you see that as a positive, and are there pitfalls to that?
You know, I have very strong feelings on this subject. I talk about it often. I think that the old system was extremely unfair to athletes. The NCAA was making billions of dollars, and it's like making a movie, and you're not going to give the actors any money for being in the movie. I think what they did to fix it is going to legalize cheating on a grand scale. I understand the NCAA is investigating Memphis right now for giving, because Federal Express gave huge amounts of money, NILs, to 3 incoming recruits. And so I don't know what the perfect answer is. I think athletes definitely need to be compensated. The problem is, as I like to quote my dear and late friend John Thompson, he used to say, I don't run a democracy. I treat everybody fairly, but I don't treat everybody the same. And so if you think, if I could go back over 30, 40 years, if you said, hypothetically, every college could pay $1 million to its basketball players. There's 13 players on scholarship. If you're at Georgetown in 1982, you give all the money to Patrick Ewing, and you say to the rest of the players, we're going to give you a scholarship worth $100,000 a year, maybe more, for the next 4 years to play with one of the great players in the history of the game. If you're at Georgetown in 93, you say you could play with Allen Iverson, I give him all the money. If you're at Duke with Zion, you give all the money to Zion. Even though there's some great players around him, those are transcendent players. Had LeBron gone to college or Kobe, you'd say the same thing. I think that most of the players on a basketball team will find out that when college basketball ends, they can't get a job making as much money as the value of the scholarship. And the problem is that the people around them don't emphasize enough to the players how valuable the scholarship really is, and that they should spend more time learning some type of a skill in college to translate their college experience and their competitiveness into a job when school is over. So I think it's really sort of like a huge gulf between the players that really have significant value and the rest of the players. And I thought that a better way for the NCAA to handle the NIL would have been create some kind of a trust fund where every player that plays gets a certain share, because the players that really have the ability to sell their name have to be really careful that you don't give your name away in college for 50 or 100,000, and then you turn pro and you've diluted yourself in the marketplace, maybe worth $1 million. That was my fear with Michael all the time, that, you know, we had to really take our time and make the right deals. We had as many as we did, we could have done 10 times as many. You know, I had to be the brand manager and keep it really select. And so I think that college athletes definitely deserve to capitalize on their name, but I'm not sure the methodology that we put in place in round one is the right methodology.
Okay. Circling back to advertising for a moment, do you have any favorite sports commercials or campaigns that are happening now that you're particularly fond of?
I really have, so much has gone digital recently. Like the normal like 30-second TV ad, like the great Microsoft ad at the Super Bowl or the famous Bean Joe Great ad. There are so few of those, and I think in basketball, and I don't want to sound bitter because I'm not, but so much of it is a recreation of what happened 20 or 30 years ago. If I had a young player today, like a LeBron, I would never do Nike, Coca-Cola. Been there, done it. That's exactly why Michael didn't go with Converse or Adidas. I wanted something fresh and different for him. I love Roger Federer starting his own shoe company. I hope he's successful. I'm a big Roger Federer fan. He's a great champion on and off the tennis court. And I think there's some great commercials. I really do. But, I sort of think that it needs to be different. I can't off the top of my head say, oh God, this is a great one I've seen today. But there are a lot of great ones.
Okay. Last question for you, David. What are you most excited about in the world of sports these days? What's got you looking to the future?
Well, I really think it's finally, America has entered the worldwide stage with soccer. For years, soccer's been the world sport, and it's been asleep in America. I think there's a great growth in soccer. I think there's a tremendous surge in women's sports, which I think is terrific, particularly women's soccer. I'm really following closely, the activities. My partner is a strategic advisor to the Women's Soccer Union. She's been with me for 20 years, and she played college soccer. She's really into soccer. I think the labor situation in the NBA is disappointing to me. I think that the league and the union need to be partners, and rather than adversaries. They need to be stewards of a worldwide business that David Stern ushered in an age where basketball is played in 220 countries. Think about this for a minute. 220 countries, including China, where more people play basketball every day than there are people who live in the United States. And in India, those two countries probably represent 35% of the world's population. And yet basketball worldwide, the NBA is a smaller business than the NFL, which is played primarily in the United States. I think Stern was the greatest commissioner in the history of sports, and he globalized the game. But there's not enough of a cooperation between the union and the league, where they need to grow the business. Basketball should be, in my opinion, $25 to $30 billion business. If it were, and we took off these ridiculous maxes, then the players like LeBron and Steph Curry, I'm a huge Steph Curry fan, love the way he handles himself. They'd be making $150 million like Messi did last year, instead of making 40. And so I look going forward to, we have a new union leader. I haven't met her yet, and I hope that she takes that challenge of growing the business. I think fans are tired of injunctions and lockouts and strikes. There's some stuff going on in baseball. And I wish there was a way that we could see the picture, the bigger picture. This is entertainment. And people look to sports to get away from injunctions and lockouts and strikes and the stuff they have in their office every day. That's why they love the commercials, because it's the light side of sports, the funny side of sport. You see the players without their uniforms sometimes, without their helmets, without their war paint, and you see them as everyday people. That's why it's so endearing when you hit the right one, and it becomes an element of pop culture. So I hope that we could have an area, if I could use the expression, Pax Romana, an era of greater peace in the sports arena, because the growth is phenomenal. Now, the other place it is exploding is in things like esports, gaming, gambling. I'm on college at Syracuse in sports management, the fall college. And we're the first college in America to award a degree in analytics. We have an amazing analytics program under Professor Rodney Paul. And the director of the program, Michael Veely, we're trying to create new verticals in the areas where we think sports is going to be 5 to 10 years from now. And you start to see it when you see all these nerdy GMs who barely know what shape the basketball is, but they're whiz bangs with the numbers. And that's where I think the business is going. It's going into gaming, esports, gambling, and certainly international. And that's, for me, I'm going to probably be more of a fan watching that than a person, in the arena. But I've lived my dream. I always wanted to be in sports. Could not have had a more enjoyable career. Been around greater clients that I've had a chance to be around, and those people truly enabled me to be who I am today.
David Falk, a great career and a lot to look forward to as well. Clio Sports 2021 Lifetime Achievement Award winner. Thanks, David, for your time. Congrats. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise, I'm truly honored to receive the award.
Thank you.
Wow, my mind is blown. Mr. Falk, if you ever represent female broadcasters in the sports space, please call me. I don't even know how to follow that. Oh, wait. Yes, I do. The Heisman of the Clio Sports world, this year's grand winners. These magnificent winners stood out among the rest, climbing their way out of the scrum to the top, and were awarded this prestigious award by a jury of their peers. Sports fans, I give you your 2021 Grand Clios.
Let's get it started. Throw your hands in the air while the beat is dropping. Acting like you don't care when everybody's watching. Just keep whipping your hair like that, you got it. Yeah, you're feeling it too. Let's get it started. I'm ready, ready. Let's get it, get it. I'm ready, ready. The world is watching. What you gonna do? Let's get it started. Let's get it started. Let's get it started. Let's get it, get it. Let's get it started. Let's get it started. Yeah. Give me something new. Time to break loose. Take it to another level. Now we on the move. Shout if you coming with me. Going over the limit. On your mark, keep it steady. So tell me, are you ready? Let's get it, get it. Yeah. I'm ready, ready. Are you ready, ready? Let's get it started.
Incredible. Congratulations to this year's winners. If I were you, I'd be getting on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or whatever and let everyone know that you won. This is a huge deal, so please tag your win with @Clio Awards and #Clio Sports for everyone to see. And don't worry, your hardware is on its way. And remember, there are more MVPs to be mentioned, as are of the years. You do not want to miss that. In fact, let's take a look at this year's of the year finalists. I think we know none of us would have our jobs if it wasn't for the fans. So let's acknowledge and celebrate them. The quiet fans, the fair weather fans, the fanatics. Without you, sports wouldn't be what it is. It's because of you, the athletes play harder, faster, and work towards those wins. What the last almost 2 years has brought to light is that you, the fans, are the #1 thing in making sports great. Our next guests are here to discuss just that. They're here today to discuss marketing to fandom, presented by our friends at Aquimo in our next conversation. How to engage with consumers and fans wherever they are.
Hey everyone, I'm Azar Ahmed, head of digital at Octagon, the preeminent talent and management marketing and creative agency in sports and entertainment. I'm honored to be the moderator for today's panel discussing how to engage consumers and fans wherever they are, sponsored by Aquimo. With us today is a panel of esteemed guests. Maybe Mark, if you can kick us off, and then we'll go to Justin and Adrian. I'll let you introduce yourselves.
Absolutely pleasure to be here. Just a little background on me. I'm Mark Jeffrey, founder and CEO of Clio. I'm actually a recovering professor. I was on the faculty at Northwestern Kellogg School of Management for over 15 years. I'm the author of the book Data Driven Marketing that was awarded Best Book of the Year by the American Marketing Association. So looking forward to talking data, analytics, and brand marketing and fandom.
Awesome. Hey, thank you guys for having me. Justin Toman here, head of Pepsi Sports Marketing. Been in the role for a little bit, going on my 15th year at Pepsi. I'm about 8 or 10 in the sports marketing side of it. And just love that we get to work with really big, fun brands at Pepsi and really big, massive scale sports platforms. And the intersection of that world is just such an awesome and fascinating place to be.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. My name's Adrian Jonas, and I work at MasterCard. I've been here for about 7 years, where I manage MasterCard sponsorships for North America on the sports and arts and culture verticals. Prior to MasterCard, I spent a lot of my time at MBNA and then Bank of America, where I also led marketing and sponsorships for multiple sports properties in colleges and universities. So exciting to be here to talk to all of you today.
Yeah, thank you for being on the panel. Maybe to kick us off, there's many things I think that we can unpack here, but, first and foremost, maybe, I'd love to hear a little bit about, you've done your introduction, but maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, how you fit within the company, and specifically, what does fandom mean to you? Maybe we can go in reverse order with this. Adrian, maybe you want to kick us off. What does fandom mean to you?
Sure. I think what fandom means to me, it's about, a shared passion for something with a community. It's about a family and a community driven experience to celebrate what you love. We're all about how do we connect consumers and our fans to priceless. And it's that fandom, right? Like what you really care about. And, I'd say funny, recently I was out in Madison, Wisconsin, and I saw fandom there at a football game. It's really everybody, the connection that brings everybody together about what they love. So it's sports, it's entertainment, it's music, whatever it is. It's that shared passion for something with a community.
Yeah, that's great to hear. How about from the Pepsi perspective, Justin?
Yeah, that's a great question. For us, for me, I think fandom in sports is one of the most powerful things in terms of a consumer passion point that there is. I mean, there's other things like entertainment and music and fashion and food. All these things, people are into a lot of things. But if you think about the uniqueness of sport, it lasts a lifetime. It even is passed down from generation to generation. In a world where my favorite food is one thing today and maybe I try something new tomorrow, or my taste in music, certainly fashion changes over time. If you're born a New York Yankees fan, you probably will die a Yankees fan, even if you move to Los Angeles, and you're going to pass that down to your kids ideally. And so I love that longevity element to fandom. And in a way, it's the ultimate brand consumer relationship. If you think about sports properties as a brand unto themselves, because it's so deep and it's so deeply emotional, right? You get the blessing and the curse of that. Fans, when they love you, you'll hear about it. And fans, when they hate you, they'll hear about it. So I love the passion around it and the emotion around it. And with us, our products, are inherently part of that fan experience. If you think about what you do in a stadium, you're eating and drinking our products. If you're going to host a Super Bowl party, you're going to buy water, soda, and chips, and probably beer as well. So just inherently, our products, we think, have a relevant place to be in that fan experience. And from a brand perspective, we're trying to make sure that we're not just present, but yet we're additive to that experience and not overbearing in it. So it's a fine line, but when done right, we can truly be additive to the fan experience.
Yeah, that's great. Mark, I'd love to hear your angle as well, but, also, tell us a little bit more about Aquimo and, how you originated that idea as well in relation to fandom.
Absolutely. Well, it's all about fan engagement and just the passion that the fans have for sports, which is unbelievable. So we actually started 4 years ago. We figured out how to take mobile devices and connect them to digital boards in stadiums. We started with 3 teams. We had the Chicago White Sox, and we had the NBA team, and we had an NCAA D1 team. That was 4 years ago. Today we're live with 100 plus teams and events. And again, it's all about passion. It's all about connecting the passion of the fan and the brand of whatever the team is or the property, could be a league with the other brands, right? And so that the 1 + 1 is like 10. But that said, though, I kind of got to show you, right, what we do. So if you don't mind, we have a 30-second video that'll explain what Aquimo does. So in a nutshell, the nerdy tech is that we're able to take thousands of fans in a stadium. And we typically today have anywhere from 4,500 to 7,500 players in an NFL stadium. And they play simultaneously on the digital board. And then the new frontier for us is we're getting into TV marketing. So you're actually playing at home.
Yeah, it's great to hear. I guess kind of parlaying with that, I'm curious within your organizations, we talked about the value of fandom and some of the uniqueness about it. I'm curious, where does fandom and sort of general sort of consumer engagement intersect at your organization? It's a little bit all over the place, I've found, in the industry. Some view it as kind of passion points, some view it as kind of broad reach sorts of affinities. Could you talk a little bit about how you view that within the organization? Maybe we'll kick it off to you, Justin, to kick us off on that.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And I love Mark the video, and happy that Mountain Dew is part of that as well.
Absolutely.
Great work with you guys on the Mountain Dew 3-point shot, and such a cool way to bring that platform to life in stadium. So yeah, I mean, listen, we look at sports a few different ways. One of which is reach, like you mentioned. There are hundreds of millions of fans, depending on the definition of a fan, in this country in North America. And so we are, by definition, it's just a very fertile place to play in terms of reaching literally millions of people with a message. And still the value of live sports from a linear TV and even streaming perspective. We know live sports brings in eyeballs. But even beyond that, we look to sports to get that scale, but also go deep. And because it is, like I mentioned earlier, such a deeply rooted emotional passion point, we believe there's long-term brand equity value to be had to partner with sports organizations, the Yankees, the Jets, the Giants, you name it. We're fortunate to have some of the best sports partners in the world. We believe that if we partner with them, do the right things, continuously and consistently activate the partnership, which is really important, putting it out in the market for fans to see and touch and feel, that there is not only short-term sales and revenue from that, but true long-term brand equity can be built. So we do look at sports in that dual way of, yes, we know it can reach people, but we also know over time we can go really deep with them. And sports is a really big part of the marketing mix for our biggest brands. When you think about Pepsi and Mountain Dew, and even some others, Gatorade certainly is core to the athlete experience. But, we do feel like it's a really important part of what we do on some of our biggest brands.
And I have some familiarity with this, Adrian, given that MasterCard is a client, so thank you for that. But, if you could talk a little bit about price lists and kind of how you see that as being a way to ignite some of the fandom, I'd love for you to share a little bit on that.
Absolutely. It really intersects with priceless experiences across passions. We focus on core consumer passions to deliver once-in-a-lifetime moments that the fans will never forget. Similar, it's about, delivering value for our cardholders, our partners, and also brand affection. I know I heard that, from you, Justin, too. But, our sponsorships and our partnerships strategically give us assets and access to the unimaginable. And that's really about, connecting those priceless experiences across the passions for our cardholders and consumers.
One thing that maybe we can pivot to is a little bit more around kind of audiences. And, I'm curious, Mark, when the sports industry, obviously this wouldn't be a pandemic panel if we didn't talk about the pandemic in some way, but, when COVID hit everyone hard, no fans at stadiums and whatnot, how did Aquimo kind of adapt as an engagement sort of a company around the live sort of a process into the virtual? And then I'd love to kind of hear a little bit more broadly, from the brand side as well. from your perspective?
I'll tell you, it was pretty darn rough, just to say the least. I remember very vividly. I think it was it May or March 4th. I was in the stadium at the Lakers packed stadium. We're live on the board with Mountain Dew, and there's 20,000 people in that stadium. We had 2,200 players, and it was awesome. And then on the 11th, it was all over, and it was just like, oh my gosh, it was just everything stopped, right? But I think it's these hard times that make you innovate, and it drives creativity. And so we were actually in the thick of it with just about to launch. Actually, we just launched a campaign with Zion Williamson. It was a play at home 8-week campaign with Mountain Dew, and we actually pivoted very quickly to play at home. And we invented a new way to play where we had the celebrities playing live with the fans at home. And it was kind of touchy, because it was like, you want it to be this, it was really a downer, right? We're all sitting at home and you're locked down and whatnot, so the idea that you're going to go out and have fun is kind of, was very sensitive. But the idea that, hey, you can come play live with Zion Williamson and really kind of get back, have some joy and excitement was where we're at. So we actually rolled that out. It's a new product that we have that we're able to do live streaming. We're able to play against celebrities, be it on live stream TV or other media.
Yeah, that's great. Maybe I'd love to hear from the brand side. Adrian, I know we did some work with you, obviously, with things around golf as the pandemic kind of hit. But how did you kind of adjust to the pandemic era, and how did it kind of change how you look at audiences?
Yeah, absolutely. When COVID happened, we had to quickly shift all of our experiences from live to digital. So it happened really fast. It did create real scale in enabling access to passion. From on a sports perspective, I remember, we had Tim Wakefield teaching how to do the knuckleball we had, obviously we have multiple passion points, but we would have a celebrity chef cooking with a sports athlete. We tried to connect the best way we can to consumers with virtual events, but we needed to be mindful that this is a new world, and we're going to have to keep thinking about experiences as hybrid, which will be a combination of both as we move forward.
That's great. Any stories from the PepsiCo side, Justin?
Yeah, very similar to Adrian. I mean, we have this kind of three-tiered approach to activation, which is anchoring our brands in stadium and providing fans really fun, engaging experiences. Part of what we do at Clio, obviously. Activating in the retail marketplace, that's in large and small format stores all over a market, and then amplifying via content, digital technology, all those things. And really, what was the first two were taken out. If you think about it, obviously nobody's in the stadium. When no butts are in seats, you can't activate there. There's nothing to do. In the market, especially on the early days of the pandemic, and I'm sure people can relate, you were running in and out of stores with 6 masks on. I mean, you were, a lot of, obviously the delivery shopping really, happened almost overnight. I mean, I didn't know what Instacart was one day, and the next day, that's all we do, right? And so we were forced in this place where we're actually not activating. We're not taking the team marks and the IP to retail environments where we sell our product. And so that all changed overnight. And so really we're looking at only one of the 3 places, which is the Amplify. And that tends to be, like you mentioned, the digital experiences, the virtual, the technology, how are fans continuing to engage with sports? Because even though sports weren't happening, people were still engaging with them, whether it was old reruns of games or things like, The Last Dance, which, got hot really quickly. So we definitely started leaning into that Amplify space, which is all about, the digital, the virtual. I think we had a few good wins there. And I think we tried to tap into what fans were talking about. You try to pick up on conversations because you couldn't be contextually relevant as to what happened in the game last night or what's happening now. Like that, to be real time is one thing we always try to do. But it was more about what are people saying about The Last Dance? How was Gatorade involved if they were, right? Because they had a Jordan relationship. It was finding those other moments outside of live sports, which weren't necessarily happening, unfortunately, and trying to make sure we were part of or helping instigate those conversations and experiences. So Definitely, I think we all had to pivot very quickly and kind of, go off the back foot a little bit, but lean into what was happening real time, virtually mostly.
Yeah, that's great. One of the things I've always said is, marketing is such a great experiment and maybe mankind's greatest experiment. But, if at first you don't succeed, you call it version 1.0, right? So I'm sure there were some moments in there during the pandemic where you guys were trying a lot of different things and maybe not all of them went the way that you did. I'm curious, were there some things that you tried early on that didn't succeed or change significantly? Anything you feel that's worth highlighting? And if so, why or why not?
I could jump in. I don't know if it was necessarily that it didn't succeed. It was more the pivot, right? So when the pandemic happened, we had planned a big campaign around contactless transit, right? So then when nobody's riding the transit, the subway, whatever it may be, we had to quickly pivot and flip it to more the digital side of things. So, similar to how Justin was mentioning that too. So it was really the quick pivot that we had to do when you had planned something and then it wasn't really relevant at that point. So that was one thing that definitely impacted us.
Unless you had something to add, Justin, maybe we could pivot to another piece of, with the hybrid sort of fandom. Right now, we've got a lot of different fandoms that have splintered and the landscape is even more scattered than it was before, especially as we return to live. I'm curious, maybe Mark, from your perspective, could you talk a little bit about how Aquimo specifically engages, customers wherever they are? And I'd love to kind of hear, from your perspectives, how you kind of adapted a little bit of reaching out to people wherever they are in more places and spaces than ever.
Absolutely. We started as fan engagement inside the stadium, right? So obviously there's no fans in the stadium, that's kind of a problem. So, it became obvious that we have to figure out play at home pretty quickly. And we did that. We were actually live with 4 of the NBA teams in the bubble where we were playing at home. We were and also live with the Blackhawks. The Blackhawks is a really cool example because they were up in Canada, okay? And the fans were all in Chicago, okay? But they played our game. And the crazy thing was 14,500 people played each game, which was just crazy for us. So they're playing the Aquimo Tech remotely, playing at home, and it works. And so in a way, that was kind of cool. The other crazy innovation that for us came out of COVID is the QR code. Okay, so we used to be like, hey, get into Mountain Dew Play Live or whatever it might be, right? And type it in. Now it is we put QR codes on all the digital boards and on TV, and you can just scan and go. So you're in seconds. So literally now we can engage with fans, 100,000 fans in roughly 20 seconds, which to me it just blows my mind.
I'm curious from the brand perspective, and Adrian and Justin, feel free to chime in, but given that sort of experimentation that happened very rapidly during COVID, I'm curious how, you kind of as an organization go around sort of new testing of content or platform. Do you have kind of an enterprise strategy? Do you kind of look at things live and in market? How did you kind of do that, during that whole sort of a COVID hit, and how has that kind of changed the culture, now in sort of our new reality? Maybe Justin, if you could kick us off on that.
Yeah, no, it's such I love what you said. It's a great experiment. It's like kind of a live case study every day, right? Nobody really knows the answers, but we'll try some things and see what sticks. I think that one of the biggest ironies about the pandemic was that it didn't create any of these consumer shifts. It didn't create anything that's different now in sports because of the pandemic. It didn't create it. But the irony of the pandemic on sports was it literally stopped sports in its tracks. Yet it accelerated all these trends. Like my point, what didn't create the shift to contactless payment or mobile ticketing? Those things were already in progress for candidly some years in many places. It just accelerated it. So I think that's the biggest thing. Is there's nothing new, in my opinion, that has come about because of COVID. It's just things have been really accelerated up that curve, and the adoption of fans has just been accelerating. Think about things like frictionless this and contactless that, and delivery of groceries. All these things were happening, but the pandemic pushed them along. And so I think that acceleration, fans were more willing to try new things and to sign up for a streaming service or to try an Instacart delivery. And when things stick, it really happens quickly and behavior changes. So I think for us, the biggest learning from a marketing perspective was that we have to be, agile enough to adapt to that. What's our plan for marketing when not as many people are going to grocery stores? What's our plan when stadiums might not come back for 6 months or a year, and that's a big source of revenue for us? So being able to pivot a little bit, quicker than we normally would have. And the beauty of digital is from a content perspective, you can certainly craft things on a shoestring budget and try them. And if there is, with one team or with one league, and if it happens, or if you, kind of catch something, you can then scale it out to all your other teams. So I think we tried some things early on with, a team or two digitally. We think, if it didn't work, we didn't like it, we didn't replicate it. But if it did, we all of a sudden said, oh, hey, this is good. Let's share this over here, share it over here, and try to build it. One good example of that was something we did with the Buffalo Bills and the Jets, which was we found this Buffalo Bills fan a Jets fan, lived next to a Buffalo Bills fan up in Buffalo, and they kind of had this like neighborly feud, of like Jets Bills, and this guy painted a Bills, logo on his garage facing his neighbor's house. And we kind of caught wind of that and really stoked it and amplified it, and ultimately ended up giving this guy a billboard and a local TV spot to kind of stick it to his neighbor to say, the Jets fans don't belong in Buffalo. All done very good natured, but it was one of these instances where you're kind of, instead of keeping track of what's going on in the game or the score, because they weren't happening, to, okay, what are fans talking about? How are fans, interacting with one another? And how can we be a part of that?
Yeah, I love that authenticity of that. Maybe Adrian, I'd love to hear your perspective, again, whether it's part of, how you were experimenting with things, or maybe even recipes for success around engagement. Have there been any nuggets that you have for our audience in the sense of what you found does or doesn't work?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of similarities in what Justin said. I mean, the fact that the move of digital adoption in a matter of around 8 weeks would have probably taken about 5 years for what happened. I mean, I know even just from our perspective, we were talking about contactless payments, tap and go. It was all awareness of what that was, and now that's really not a factor, right? Like, people are aware of what that is and understand that difference in the payment space. So it just all happened so fast. And, similar even with the QR codes, right? Like, we all know that's how you get your menu. You're going in and getting it. We're used to that, and that adoption is going to stay. And the same thing with contactless payments too.
Yeah, that's great. Speaking of those sorts of things, I remember at one point the cynic in me said, stop trying to make QR happen, but then all of a sudden it happened, right? But then, the edge of tech is what really excites me and a lot of people, just how it continues to proliferate, whether it's merchandising and collectibles manifesting as NFTs now. You continue to see esports and gaming. You start to see other things around the metaverse. I think things are coming out more every day around AR and VR. And even social sort of platforms and their engagement. I'm curious, from your organization's perspectives, do you see any sort of general trends around that for yourselves? Is it an increase, a decrease? Do you feel like you're going to stay the same in the sense of experimenting with some of that edge tech, or what is your approach to some of that emerging tech?
I think from us, we always tried to be close to the edge and doing things and pushing the boundaries and trying new things. I think just by the nature of our brands, Pepsi, Mountain Dew, you feel like, these are brands are in pop culture, and so therefore we're trying to be in pop culture and kind of ride that wave, whatever's happening. I think the pandemic did push us to try to be faster, like even more on the cutting edge. So I do think what we're trying to make sure we're doing, NFTs, or how can one of the big things I love, and we're trying to find the right way in. We've dabbled in it a little bit is online gambling. Can a brand like Pepsi or Mountain Dew truly partner with one of these online gambling companies and our sports partners, the NFL, the NBA, and so forth, to do some really fun things? And can we actually extend our marquee sports platforms like the 3-point contest and with the NBA? Is there a way to gamify that in terms of gambling and esports that in a way that would appeal to fans? I think there is. We haven't done it yet. We're talking about a lot of things, but those are things that we're trying to do even more quickly than we were before. Because we know if you don't do it quick these days, to Adrian's point, somebody else is going to do it, and you lose the edge.
Maybe as we start to wrap up here, I have a couple of just questions around, looking reflectively at about the past 18 months. I'm curious, have there been any sort of particular surprises? Like, what's the biggest surprise that you think you've seen in maybe the last 18 months within either, what you've seen in the brand work or the industry as a whole? Maybe Mark, if you could kick us off, I'm curious, like what surprised a scrappy sort of a pivoted company in this space?
I think it's I think what you heard a lot in the discussion was digital. You heard digital, right? So when we think about traditional marketing that happens in a stadium, for example, right, or even on TV, right, it's a static ad or maybe a video ad that plays, right? And it turns out that doesn't work very well. It really doesn't. And teams don't want to talk about that. Agencies don't want to talk about it, but it really doesn't work very well. So this idea that it's impressions and all that stuff, okay, great. But it turns out that 20,000 impressions you're supposed to get for your ad, if it happens 10 minutes into halftime, actually, you don't get 20,000 impressions. You don't, okay? Because everybody's out of the stadium, out of the bowl. So what we're finding, and I don't know if it's a surprise, it just is what it is, right? I kind of say, prepare to get naked, because when you do this digital stuff, you get to see the facts. You get to see that, you know what? Some teams are amazing at activating. They're great. Other teams, not so good at all, right? And it's very clear, right? So we're collecting data. We're able to and we're able to help teams. We're able to help brands using that data to improve their marketing. The value proposition we have is that on average, a person plays our games for 4.5 minutes. Okay, so it's targeted branding, be it Pepsi or whoever it might be, right? For 4.5 minutes. In addition to that, say 60-second spot on the board, you know who your players are. By the way, we're collecting data on those players, right? So we get those players. And the beautiful thing, I think, this is nerdy stuff, right? We offer you a coupon at the end of it. So here's a digital coupon so you can go get your free Pepsi, right, at the grocery store or at the concession stand. And by the way, that's closing the loop on ROI. So big picture to me is, I think, is a surprise, or it's a happy accident, if you will. The drive to digital is improving marketing overall as we get data and transparency.
That's great. Adrian or Justin, from your perspective, any surprises?
I'll just reiterate what I said before, which was, if you had told me, before the pandemic started, hey, if the world of sports just suddenly stopped, would fan trends accelerate? I would have said that's completely ironic. No, absolutely not. But that was the biggest surprise. The actual stoppage of sports has had this massive acceleration on trends in sports and fan consumption. And the one other thing, I shouldn't be surprised, because we're so fortunate to have great partners in sports. But just having gone through a lot of these tough conversations, a tough year and a half with partners, the strength of our partnerships, I think, is even better. Our partnerships are stronger and deeper now. Most of our teams and leagues than it was even before, because you kind of went through the ringer together and took a common sense over contract approach, and I think we're in a better place because of it.
I guess, Adrian, I'll lob it up to you as an audible here, so you can either go over a surprise or maybe just predict the future. What are some of the trends or technologies that excite you about consumer engagement? Your choice.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm very aligned. I think that at least the one thing that definitely, how quickly everything moved to digital was what was the biggest surprise as far as how fast it all happened. But I think the future of hybrid experiences, that's something that's going to stick. Definitely something that I think we see, digitally enabling experiences, becoming an integral to how consumers engage with their passions. I think that's something like an immersive digital experience that's something that's going to stay. And then I think what excites me, I know everyone, as we talked a little bit about it, NFT and where that goes. I think that'll be an interesting thing as in here to see where that goes. We want to try it. We've done one globally. We did an NFT globally, so I think that's something that's coming.
Yeah, I love the implications on sort of closing the loop with commerce as well. Within that, Justin, same question for you. What excites you about the trends, the platforms, the technologies, the future?
I think NFTs are really interesting. It's still hard to figure out the true value and candidly where a brand like ours fits in with that. Like, what value are we truly bringing to the equation that fans and consumers are going to see value in? But I think that's something we'll definitely try and hopefully succeed in. I still love the intersection of brands and sports gambling, and what does that truly look like that is good for the brand, is good for the gambling operator, and ultimately engaging for the fan. I also love, I'm just watching it from afar, but all these emerging essentially sponsorship categories that didn't exist a year ago, crypto, fintech, again, online sports gambling, like all these things are, they're showing up in sports and in sponsorship, and seeing what they do and how they engage with properties is really interesting. So we're keeping an eye on that and hopefully taking some learnings.
Great. Same for you, Mark.
Well, I'm just crazy excited. Again, the nerd in me is I'm all about gamification, and it's coming, and it's going to be everywhere. It's really coming. As I said, we went from 4 teams to 100+ teams, where the vast majority of those are full season in stadium in just 4 years, and we're coming for TV and live stream. And you're going to see that the difference between a TV ad that just plays and you interact with the ad and you could win something, or by the way, you win a coupon or whatever it might be, it's night and day. It is this. We've actually done the ROI on it. It's anywhere from 350 to 750% better ROI for the brand. So it's coming, and the fan engagement and thinking about new ways to engage the fans on that device that everybody's got in their pocket. How do we do that?
Yeah, totally. And to answer my own question, one of the things that really excites me, being a former, technology person, designer that became a direct marketer and then an advertiser, is the fact that now we've got the scale available, to your point, Jeff, there's so much that's there. And I feel like, we can finally close the loop with companies like yours, Mark, to be able to reach the scale that we need. But at the same time, also really be very personal in ways. And I think privacy legislation and some of those things are making organizations wake up to the fact that first party data is more valuable than ever. And now it's a question of the value exchange. What can we do with it to provide true value in some way in a direct model that I think is, the Pandora's box is ready to be cracked wide open. So, all right. On that, I do want to thank everyone for joining us today. And thank you again to our sponsor, Aquimo. And with that, we'll let you get back to the rest of your day.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Iberia Bank and First Horizon, both leaders in banking in the sports and entertainment industry, have joined forces to create a leading financial services company dedicated to enriching the lives of professional athletes, coaches, and owners in all major sports.
All right, everyone, it's the final minutes of the game. Let's see who came through in the clutch. This year's Of the Year winners are Agency of the Year, FCB New York. Brand of the Year, Michelob Ultra. Team of the Year, Tampa Bay Lightning. Congratulations to each and every one of the 2021 Clio Sports winners. Your endurance through the last year is nothing short of inspiring. And as I mentioned before, please check out all of the winners, the full list at Clios.com. And don't forget to tag us at Clio Awards and hashtag Clio Sports to show off your new statue, take a selfie, do a TikTok dance, whatever you want. And thanks again to all of our presenting sponsors, AT&T and First Horizon, and official partners, Aquimo and Dunn & Company. Thanks so much for celebrating with me today and for having me as your host for the evening. The world is reopening and I, for one, couldn't be happier. Until next time, be safe.